The massive nest shouldn't exist. 20 feet wide, woven from branches thick as a man's arm, it sat between two ancient oaks like something out of a nightmare. Daniel Mercer, veteran ranger with 15 years in these woods, felt his blood run cold as he spotted the torn fabric caught in its twisted depths. A child's jacket faded blue with cartoon dinosaurs. His trembling fingers reached for his radio, but the words died in his throat when he saw what lay beneath fresh boot prints, dozens of them leading deeper into the forbidden section of the forest. Hey everyone, before we dive into this incredible true story that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about our national parks, drop a comment below, letting me know what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's begin. Daniel Mercer had walked these trails for 15 years, but this morning felt different from the moment he stepped out of his ranger station. The forest held its breath as if waiting for something terrible to unfold. No birds sang, no squirrels chattered. Even the wind had stilled, leaving the towering pines and oaks frozen like sentinels guarding an ancient secret. At 43, Daniel carried himself with the measured confidence of a man who'd seen combat in Afghanistan and found peace in the solitude of nature. His weathered hands knew every trail, every stream, every hidden glen in the 50,000 acres of wilderness he protected. But peace, he would soon learn, was nothing more than an illusion in these woods. The morning had started routinely enough. Coffee at 5 a.m., equipment check at 5:30, and on the trail by 6. The September air carried that crisp edge that promised an early winter, and Daniel pulled his jacket tighter as he headed towards Section 7, the remote northeastern quadrant of the park that saw few visitors even during peak season. Another quiet morning, he muttered to himself, a habit developed from years of solitary patrols. The sound of his own voice helped fill the oppressive silence that seemed to press in from all sides. He'd been walking for nearly an hour when he noticed the first sign that something was wrong. The deer trail he'd followed countless times had been disturbed. Not by animals. Daniel knew every track, every scat pattern, every feeding sign in these woods. This was different. The undergrowth had been trampled by boots, many boots moving in single file like a military unit trying to minimize their footprint. What the hell? Daniel knelt, examining the prints more closely. They were fresh, maybe 12 hours old. The tread pattern was distinctive military surplus, the kind you could buy at any Army-Navy store. But why would a group this large be hiking through Section 7 at night, and why move in formation? He followed the trail, his hand unconsciously moving to the bear spray on his belt. In 15 years, he'd never had to use it on anything more threatening than an aggressive black bear protecting her cubs. But something about these tracks made his combat instincts flare to life instincts he thought he'd buried when he left the service. The trail led deeper into the forest, away from any marked paths. Daniel knew he should radio it in, but what would he say? That he'd found footprints? His supervisor, Mike Harrison, would laugh it off. Mike was 3 years from retirement and had made it clear that he wanted those 3 years to pass without incident, without paperwork, without anything that might complicate his transition to a fishing boat in Florida. Just a little further, Daniel told himself, pushing through a thick cluster of mountain laurel. Just see where they were headed then. He stopped so abruptly that he nearly fell forward. There, in a clearing he'd passed 100 times before, sat something that shouldn't exist. The nest, for lack of a better word, was enormous. A perfectly woven sphere of branches, logs, and what looked like scavenged lumber. It rose nearly 8 feet high and stretched at least 20 feet in diameter, wedged between two massive oak trees whose branches had been incorporated into its structure. Daniel's mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. No bird in North America built nests this large. Even eagles, the largest nest builders he knew of, created structures maybe 6 feet across at most. This was architectural, deliberate, and disturbingly recent. The wood was fresh, some branches still bearing green leaves. He approached slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. The construction was intricate, almost artistic in its complexity. Branches had been woven together with a precision that spoke of intelligence, of planning, and there, caught on a protruding stick about 4 feet up, was the piece of fabric that made his blood run cold, a child's jacket, blue with faded dinosaur prints, size small, maybe fitting a 6 or 7-year-old. Jesus Christ! Daniel breathed, his hands shaking as he reached for his radio. But as his fingers touched the device, he noticed something else. Inside the nest, partially hidden by the woven branches, were more items. A woman's purse, mud-stained and torn. A work boot size 11 or 12. A baseball cap with a logo he couldn't quite make out. And beneath it all, pressed into the soft earth at the base of the nest, were more boot prints. Dozens of them, maybe more, circling the structure like they'd been examining it, or building it, or... Daniel's radio crackled to life, making him jump. "Danny boy, you out there?" Mike Harrison's gravelly voice cut through the static. Daniel grabbed the radio, his mouth suddenly dry. "Yeah, Mike, I'm here." "Where's here? You're supposed to be checking the fire roads in Section 7. "I am in Section 7. Mike, I found something." A pause, then a sigh. "Christ, Danny, please tell me it's not another dead hiker. I just finished the paperwork from the last one." "No, it's not a body. It's..." Daniel struggled to find the words. "How did you describe something that shouldn't exist?" "You need to see this, Mike, and we might need to call the state police." "The state police, Danny? What the hell are you..." "Just come to grid reference." Daniel checked his GPS. 7794, bring a camera. And Mike, come quiet. Don't use the main trails. "You're starting to worry me, son." "Good. You should be worried. Something's very wrong out here." Daniel clicked off the radio and turned back to the nest. The morning sun had risen higher, its rays filtering through the canopy to illuminate the structure in dappled light. It was then he saw something he'd missed before, symbols carved into the supporting trees. Not random marks, but deliberate patterns. Letters, maybe, or numbers worn smooth by weather, but still visible if you knew where to look. He pulled out his phone, switching to the camera. The signal was non-existent this deep in the woods, but he could at least document what he was seeing. He started taking pictures, methodically capturing every angle, every detail. The construction method, the integrated items, the boot prints, the symbols. It was while he was photographing the far side of the nest that he found the trail. Not the one he'd followed to get here, but another leading north into the deepest part of Section 7. This trail was older, more established, but carefully hidden. Someone had transplanted ferns and moss to cover its entrance, had arranged fallen logs to discourage casual exploration. If he hadn't been looking for it, if the angle of the light hadn't been just right, he would never have seen it. Daniel stood at the trail's entrance, torn between his training and his curiosity. Every ranger protocol said he should wait for backup, should document and report, should follow procedure. But the soldier in him, the part that had tracked Taliban fighters through the mountains of Kandahar, wanted answers. The crack of a branch made the decision for him. Daniel spun hand going to his bear spray, but saw nothing. The forest had gone silent again, that oppressive quiet that made his skin crawl. Another crack, this one from the opposite direction. Then another. They were surrounding him. "Park Ranger," Daniel called out, his voice echoing through the trees. "This is a restricted area. Identify yourself." No response, but he could feel them watching from the shadows between the trees. "How many?" 3-5 more. His radio crackled again. "Danny, I'm about 10 minutes out. You better not be pulling my leg about this." Daniel kept his voice steady, professional. Mike approached with caution. "We have company out here." "Company? What kind of?" "Unknown. Multiple individuals. They're watching me right now." "Fall back, Danny. Get to the fire road and wait for me there." It was good advice. Safe advice. But as Daniel began to back away from the nest, he saw movement in his peripheral vision. A figure dressed in dark clothing, face obscured by what looked like a ski mask, stood barely visible between two pines about 50 yards away. The figure didn't move, didn't threaten, just watched. Daniel's hand moved to his sidearm, a Glock 19 he was authorized to carry, but had never drawn in 15 years of service. "I'm a federal officer," he called out. "You're trespassing on protected land. Show yourself and keep your hands visible." The figure tilted its head in almost curious gesture, then stepped backward and vanished into the shadows. "Danny! Danny, you there?" Mike's voice sounded tinny and distant through the radio. "I'm here. One suspect, possibly more. Wearing masks. Might call for state police backup. Now. Are you serious?" "Dead serious. Something big is happening out here." Daniel began moving backward, keeping his eyes on the tree line. Every few steps he caught glimpses of movement shadows flitting between trees, always maintaining distance, always watching. They were hurting him, he realized, pushing him away from the nest, away from the hidden trail. By the time he reached the fire road, his shirt was soaked with sweat despite the cool morning air. Mike's pickup appeared moments later, dust swirling in its wake. The older ranger stepped out his considerable bulk, moving with surprising grace, hand already on his own weapon. "Where are they?" Mike asked, scanning the forest. "They pulled back when they heard your truck, but they're still out there. And this thing you found..." Daniel showed him the photos on his phone. Mike's weathered face went pale as he scrolled through them. "Mother of God," he whispered. "What is this?" "I don't know, but there's more. There's a hidden trail leading north, and those people in masks. Mike, this isn't some random thing. This is organized." Mike looked at him for a long moment, and Daniel saw something in the older man's eyes he'd never seen before. Fear. "We need to get out of here," Mike said quietly. "Now." "What?" "We need to investigate." "No." Mike's voice was firm. "We need to leave, call this in from the station, and let people with bigger guns handle it." "Mike, what aren't you telling me?" The older ranger glanced at the forest, then back at Daniel. "You know, I've been here 27 years, right? Well, about 15 years ago, before you came on, we had incidents. People going missing, weird structures in the woods. The feds came in, sealed off Section 7 for 3 months. When they left, they told us it was a drug operation, all cleaned up. But Danny..." "What?" "3 rangers who asked too many questions about what really happened. They all had accidents. Car crashes, hunting mishaps, a fall from a cliff. All within a year." Daniel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. "You're saying..." "I'm saying we get in the truck. We drive back to the station and we call this in through proper channels. We do everything by the book, everything official, everything documented. And Danny, we watch each other's backs from now on." They climbed into the truck, but as Mike started the engine, Daniel took one last look at the forest. They're just barely visible through the trees, he saw them. 5 figures standing in a line watching the truck. They didn't move, didn't gesture, just stood there like sentinels. "Mike," Daniel said quietly, "I see them. Just keep looking forward. We're leaving." As they drove away, Daniel's mind raced. The nest, the hidden trail, the masked watchers, none of it made sense. But one thing was certain. Whatever was happening in Section 7 was bigger than a simple trespassing case. And whether Mike liked it or not, Daniel was going to find out what it was. The drive back to the ranger station took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. Neither man spoke, both lost in their own thoughts. The forest, which had been Daniel's sanctuary for so many years, now felt hostile, full of hidden eyes and untold secrets. When they finally pulled into the station, a small building that served as headquarters for this section of the park, Daniel noticed something odd. There was another vehicle in the parking lot, a black SUV with government plates he didn't recognize. "Were we expecting anyone?" he asked Mike. "No." Mike's hand went to his weapon. "Stay alert." They entered the station cautiously. In the main office, sitting behind Daniel's desk, was a woman in a severe black suit. She was perhaps 40, with steel gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that missed nothing. 2 men similarly dressed stood by the windows. "Gentlemen," the woman said, standing. "I'm Agent Sarah Cole, Department of Homeland Security. I understand you found something interesting in Section 7. Daniel and Mike exchanged glances. They hadn't called anything in yet. "How did you..." Mike began. "We monitor all radio traffic in sensitive areas," Agent Cole interrupted. "Section 7 has been flagged for special attention. Now, Ranger Mercer, I need you to tell me exactly what you saw out there." I want to see some identification first," Daniel said. Agent Cole smiled a thin expression that didn't reach her eyes. She pulled out a badge and ID, holding them out for inspection. They looked real, but Daniel had seen enough federal IDs in his military days to know that didn't mean much. "Satisfied?" she asked. "Not really. How did you get here so fast? Our station is 3 hours from the nearest federal office." "We were already in the area. As I said, Section 7 is of special interest to us. Now, the nest..." Daniel hesitated. Something about this felt wrong. These people had been waiting, watching. They'd known something would be found. I think we should follow proper channels, Mike said carefully. File our reports with Park Service headquarters. Let them coordinate with... That won't be necessary. Agent Cole cut him off. This is now a federal matter. All documentation, all evidence will go through us. She turned to Daniel. The photos on your phone, please. No. The word hung in the air. The two men by the window shifted slightly, hands moving toward their jackets. Excuse me. Agent Cole's voice was dangerously quiet. I said no. Those photos are evidence in a potential crime. They'll be handled according to Park Service protocols. If you want them, get a warrant. Agent Cole studied him for a long moment. You were military, weren't you, Ranger Mercer, Afghanistan, if I'm not mistaken? Kandahar province. Some interesting operations in your file. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. His military record was classified. The fact that she knew details meant she'd done her homework, had access to files that should have been sealed. What's your point? My point is that you understand chain of command, you understand operational security, and you understand that some things are bigger than Park Service protocols. She stepped closer. What you found today is part of an ongoing investigation. National security is at stake. I need those photos, and I need your silence. National security? Mike laughed, but there was no humor in it. What is Al-Qaeda building nests in our forest now? Agent Cole didn't smile. Terrorism takes many forms, Mr. Harrison. Domestic threats are just as real as foreign ones. Now I can make this easy or hard. Easy is you cooperate, hand over the evidence, sign some paperwork, and go about your lives. Hard is, well, let's not explore that option. Daniel felt his anger rising. He'd left the military to escape exactly this kind of bullshit shadow operations, need-to-know basis men in suits making veiled threats. Are you threatening us? He asked. I'm explaining reality, Agent Cole replied. You've stumbled onto something you don't understand, something dangerous. We're trying to protect you. Protect us? There were people out there in masks watching us. Are they yours? For the first time, Agent Cole looked genuinely surprised. Masks described them. Daniel hesitated, then gave her a brief description of what he'd seen. As he talked, he noticed one of the men by the window pull out a phone and start texting rapidly. This changes things, Agent Cole said when he finished. She seemed troubled, the first real emotion she'd shown. You need to stay away from Section 7, both of you. Don't go back there. Don't investigate. Don't even think about it. Lady, this is our park, Mike said. We have a responsibility. Your responsibility is to stay alive, she snapped, then composing herself. Look, I'm going to be straight with you. We've been tracking a dangerous group that we believe is operating in this area. What you found today confirms our intelligence. But if they know you found their installation, then you're both in danger. Installation, Daniel caught the word. That nest is an installation. Agent Cole hesitated clearly, debating how much to reveal. We believe it's a marker, a signal. These people, they have their own way of communicating their own symbols. That nest means something to them, and the fact that you found it... She trailed off, but Daniel could fill in the blanks. They'd stumbled onto something secret, something that wasn't meant to be found, and now they were potential targets. So what do you want us to do? Mike asked. Give us the photos, Kay. Sign a national security non-disclosure agreement, and stay out of Section 7 until we clear it. How long will that take? As long as it takes. Daniel looked at Mike, saw the older man's resignation. Mike had been through this before, knew how it would play out. But Daniel couldn't just let it go. The child's jacket, he said. There was a child's jacket in the nest. Are there missing kids involved in this? Agent Cole's expression softened slightly. We're investigating all possibilities. If there are victims, we'll find them. But you have to let us do our job. And if we don't, the softness vanished. Then you become part of the problem instead of the solution. And problems Ranger Mercer gets solved one way or another. The threat was clear. Daniel felt his fists clench, the old rage from his military days threatening to surface. How many times had he seen this government agency swooping in, claiming jurisdiction, burying the truth in classified files, while real people suffered? "Danny," Mike said quietly, putting a hand on his shoulder. "Let it go." But Daniel couldn't, not yet. "I want assurances. I want to know that this is being investigated properly, that if there are victims, they're being looked for." "You have my word," Agent Cole said. "Your word means nothing to me. I want updates. I want to know what you find out there." "That's not how this works." "Then we have a problem." The room fell silent. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Daniel could feel the other agents shifting, preparing for what? Were they really going to try to strong-arm 2 park rangers in their own station? Finally, Agent Cole sighed. "You're making a mistake, Ranger Mercer, but fine. I'll provide updates when possible. Sanitized, of course, but updates nonetheless. In exchange, you hand over those photos and sign the NDA. Deal." Daniel knew he was pushing his luck. Knew that these people could make his life very difficult if they chose to. But he also knew that backing down now meant whatever was happening in Section 7 would be swept under the rug like everything else. "Deal," he said finally. The next 30 minutes were a blur of paperwork and data transfers. Daniel watched as his photos were uploaded to a secure server, then deleted from his phone. He signed documents that promised severe legal consequences if he spoke about what he'd seen. Mike did the same, his face grim. As Agent Cole prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "Ranger Mercer, a word of advice. You have a hero complex. It's admirable, but it's also dangerous. Sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing. Remember that." Then she was gone, the black SUV disappearing down the dirt road that led back to civilization. Mike slumped in his chair. "Well, that was interesting." "Interesting, Mike, they just did what they always do," Mike interrupted. "Take over, classify everything, and leave us in the dark." "But Danny, she was right about one thing. We need to stay away from Section 7. "You really think they'll investigate, really look for those potential victims?" Mike shrugged. "Maybe. Maybe not. But it's out of our hands now." Daniel stood pacing the small office. He couldn't shake the image of that child's jacket, those dinosaur prints faded but still visible. Some parent had bought that jacket, helped their kid into it, probably fought to get them to wear it on cold mornings. And now it was hanging in some bizarre nest in the middle of nowhere. "I'm going to patrol the southern sections," he said, grabbing his hat. "Danny." "I'm not going to Section 7, Mike. I need to walk. Clear my head." Mike nodded. "Be careful. And Danny, maybe take the satellite phone, just in case." Daniel grabbed the bulky phone from its charger. It was meant for emergencies when regular cell service failed, which was often in the park. But Mike's implication was clear: he might need it for a different kind of emergency. The southern sections of the park were different from Section 7. More traveled, more open, with well-maintained trails and regular visitor traffic. But as Daniel walked, his mind kept returning to that nest, those masked figures, Agent Cole's warnings. He'd been walking for about an hour when his regular cell phone buzzed. Surprised to have signal, he checked it. An unknown number had sent a text. "They're lying to you. Check the old Morrison mine. Midnight. Come alone." Daniel stared at the message. The Morrison mine was an abandoned gold mine from the 1800s located on the eastern edge of the park. It had been closed to the public for decades, deemed too dangerous for exploration. He should ignore it. Should delete the message and forget about it. That would be the smart thing, the safe thing. But Daniel had never been particularly smart or safe. He typed back, "Who is this?" No response. The rest of his patrol passed in a blur. His mind was racing, trying to piece together what he'd stumbled into. A secret government investigation, masked figures in the forest, a mysterious text from an unknown number. It felt like something out of a conspiracy thriller, not the quiet life he'd sought as a park ranger. When he returned to the station, Mike was on the phone, his face grave. He held up a finger indicating Daniel should wait. "Yes, sir, I understand. We'll implement immediately." Mike hung up looking tired. That was headquarters. Section 7 is now officially closed to all personnel until further notice. We're to post signs and barriers at all access points. They work fast. They do. "Danny, there's more. I've been ordered to place you on administrative leave." "What?" Daniel felt like he'd been punched. "On what grounds?" "Stress-related concerns following a traumatic discovery. It's paid leave, and it's only for a week, but it keeps me away from the park while they do whatever they're doing." Mike nodded. "I fought it, but the order came from high up. Higher than I can push back against." Daniel laughed bitterly. "So that's it. I find something they don't want found and I get sidelined." "It's just a week, Danny. Take the time, rest, forget about this whole thing." But Daniel couldn't forget. That night, as he sat in his small cabin on the edge of the park, he made a decision. He pulled out his personal laptop, the one not connected to any Park Service networks, and began researching. The Morrison mine had a dark history. 3 miners had died in a collapse in 1897. In the 1950s, a family of hikers had vanished near its entrance, never to be found. In 1982, 2 teenagers exploring the mine had reported seeing strange lights and sounds before fleeing in terror. They'd been dismissed as drug-related hallucinations. But what really caught Daniel's attention was a small news item from 2009. A geology graduate student from the state university had been studying the mine for her thesis when she'd abruptly abandoned her research. When questioned, she'd only said she'd found things that weren't meant to be found and refused to elaborate. She'd left the state shortly after. Daniel looked at the clock. 10:47 p.m. If he was going to make the midnight meeting, he needed to leave soon. It was foolish, possibly dangerous, definitely against every protocol he'd ever learned. But that child's jacket haunted him. If there was even a chance someone was in danger, he had to know. He dressed in dark clothing, strapped on his personal firearm, and grabbed a powerful flashlight and backup batteries. He also took a small digital recorder, hiding it in his jacket pocket. If something happened to him, at least there might be evidence. The drive to the Morrison mine took 40 minutes. The last 10 were on a dirt road so rough he had to put his truck in 4-wheel drive. He parked a quarter-mile from the mine entrance, not wanting to announce his arrival with engine noise. The walk through the darkness was eerily reminiscent of night patrols in Afghanistan. Every shadow could hide a threat, every sound could signal danger. But instead of Taliban fighters, he was worried about what government agents, the masked figures from the forest, or something else entirely. The mine entrance loomed before him, a black mouth in the hillside, surrounded by rusted warning signs and rotted timber supports. Daniel checked his watch. 11:58. He waited, every sense on high alert. Midnight came and went. 12:05. 12:10. Then a light appeared inside the mine. Not electric, but flickering like a lantern or torch. Against every instinct screaming at him to run, Daniel entered the mine. The tunnel was narrow, forcing him to duck in places. The walls were rough-hewn rock, sweating moisture in the cool night air. The light ahead bobbed and weaved, leading him deeper. After about 100 yards, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber. Mining equipment, long abandoned and thick with rust, created strange shadows in the flickering light. And there, holding an old-fashioned oil lantern, stood a figure. It wasn't what Daniel expected. Instead of tactical gear or a suit, the person wore simple hiking clothes. When they pushed back their hood, Daniel saw a woman perhaps 35 with short brown hair and intense green eyes. "Ranger Mercer," she said. "Thank you for coming." "Who are you?" "Dr. Lisa Chen. I am a biologist. I worked for the CDC until 3 years ago." "CDC, what does the Center for Disease Control have to do with everything?" she interrupted. "What you found today, that nest, it's not the first. They've been appearing across the country for the past 5 years, always in remote areas, always accompanied by disappearances." "Disappearances?" Dr. Chen set the lantern on an old crate and pulled out a tablet. 47 confirmed cases. Hikers, campers, even a few park rangers. They vanish without a trace, and then these nests appear. She showed him photos. Dozens of them. Nests of varying sizes, all with that same intricate construction, all containing personal items. "What are they?" Daniel asked. "We don't know. The official theory is that it's some kind of cult using the nests as territory markers or ritual sites, but..." She hesitated. But I've studied the construction, the weaving pattern. It's not random. It's mathematical following a complex algorithm that would require advanced knowledge to replicate. And the DNA evidence we've found, DNA, she pulled up another file. Hair, skin cells, blood. All human, but with anomalies, genetic markers that shouldn't exist, mutations that we can't explain. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying these things aren't built by humans? I'm saying they're not built by normal humans. Whether that means they're mutants, genetic experiments, or something else, I don't know. But the government does. They've been covering it up, moving evidence, silencing witnesses. Agent Cole isn't Homeland Security, at least not the normal kind. She works for a Black Ops division that handles unusual threats. They call themselves the Department of Anomalous Events. Daniel's head was spinning. This was insane, the kind of conspiracy theory nonsense he'd always dismissed. But the evidence was right in front of him. Why are you telling me this? He asked. Because you're the first person to find a fresh nest and live to talk about it. The masked figures you saw, they're usually more aggressive. The fact that they let you leave means something. What? I don't know, but I think they wanted you to find it. I think they're trying to send a message. To who? Before Dr. Chen could answer, a sound echoed through the mine. Footsteps, multiple sets moving fast. They followed you, she whispered, fear flooding her face. Who? The government? No, them, the builders. She grabbed the lantern, blowing it out and plunging them into darkness. Daniel clicked on his flashlight, but she knocked it from his hand. No light, she hissed. They see better in the dark than we do. Our only chance is to hide. They pressed themselves against the wall behind some old equipment. Daniel's hand went to his gun, but Dr. Chen grabbed his wrist. Bullets won't stop them, she whispered. Nothing stops them. The footsteps grew closer. In the pitch darkness, Daniel could hear breathing, deep, rhythmic wrong somehow. Too deep for normal lungs, with a whistling quality that made his skin crawl. Then incredibly, a voice, but not speaking. Singing. A children's song, high and sweet, echoing through the mine. Ring around the rosy pocket full of posies. The voice was coming from directly in front of them. Daniel could feel breath on his face, hot and fetid. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. A hand touched his face, not attacking, just exploring. Fingers traced his features like a blind person trying to memorize a face. The skin felt wrong, too rough with too many joints. Then as suddenly as they'd come, they left. The footsteps receded, the singing faded, and Daniel and Dr. Chen were alone in the darkness. They waited another 10 minutes before Dr. Chen finally lit a match. In the brief flare of light, Daniel saw her face was pale, tears streaming down her cheeks. We need to leave, she said. Now. They made their way out of the mine, Daniel's flashlight finally illuminating their path. When they emerged into the night air, he took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. What were those things? He asked. I don't know, Dr. Chen admitted, but they're not the enemy. They're the victims. Victims. She looked at him with haunted eyes. The disappearances, the mutations, the nests, it's all connected. Someone is changing people, Ranger Mercer, transforming them into something else, and whoever's doing it has the full protection of the United States government. She handed him a flash drive. Everything I've collected is on here. Evidence, documents, witness testimonies. I'm leaving tonight, going off-grid. They'll come for me once they realize I've contacted you. Wait, I have questions. No time. Look at the files. Follow the trail. And Ranger Mercer trust no one. Not your supervisor, not the police, not the feds. They're all compromised. She disappeared into the darkness, leaving Daniel standing alone outside the mine, holding a flash drive that might contain answers to questions he wished he'd never asked. The drive back to his cabin was a blur. His mind kept replaying that moment in the mine, the singing, the touching, the wrongness of it all. What had Dr. Chen meant by victims who was changing people, and why was the government covering it up? When he got home, he immediately plugged the flash drive into his laptop. File after file opened, revealing a conspiracy that stretched back decades. Military experiments, genetic modification, black sites hidden in national parks across the country. And at the center of it all, a project codenamed Chrysalis. Daniel stared at the screen until his eyes burned, scrolling through document after document that painted a picture so horrifying he wished he could unsee it. Project Chrysalis had begun in 1987 as a classified military program aimed at creating enhanced soldiers through genetic modification. The early experiments had been disasters, subjects dying in agony as their bodies rejected the modifications, or worse, surviving as twisted mockeries of human beings. But they hadn't stopped. They'd just gotten better at hiding it. His hands trembled as he opened a folder labeled Subject Acquisitions. Inside were profiles of missing persons from across the country. Hikers, drifters, people society wouldn't immediately miss. Each file had a before photo and an after photo. The after photos made him close the laptop and rush to the bathroom, barely making it to the toilet before he vomited. The transformations were subtle at first glance: elongated limbs, enlarged eyes, skin with a strange texture. But the longer you looked, the more wrong they became. These weren't people anymore. They were something else, something that belonged in nightmares rather than national parks. A knock at his door made him freeze. It was 3 a.m. Nobody should be visiting at 3 a.m. Daniel grabbed his gun, approaching the door cautiously. Through the peephole, he saw Mike Harrison standing on his porch, but something was off. Mike's posture was too rigid, his eyes staring straight ahead without blinking. "Danny," Mike called out, his voice flat and emotionless. "We need to talk. Open the door." "Mike, it's 3 in the morning. What's going on?" "Open the door, Danny, please." The please sounded forced, like someone had reminded him to add it. Daniel's grip tightened on his gun. This wasn't right. Mike had been his friend for years, but the man on his porch felt like a stranger wearing Mike's face. "I'm not feeling well, Mike. Must be something I ate. Can we talk tomorrow?" "No, it has to be now. They sent me Danny. They know about the mine, about Dr. Chen. You need to come with me." Daniel's blood ran cold. How did they know? Had they been watching him, following him? "Who's they?" "Mike. You know who. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just come outside, we'll go for a drive, have a conversation, and everything will be fine." Everything will be fine. The phrase triggered a memory from the files he'd just read. It was a control phrase used on subjects who'd undergone partial modification. Their minds could be influenced, made compliant through specific verbal cues. "Mike," Daniel said carefully, "what did they do to you?" For a moment, Mike's facade cracked. His eyes widened, real emotion breaking through. "Danny," he whispered, his voice suddenly his own again. "Don't trust—" Then his face went slack again, the moment passing. "Open the door, Danny. Final warning." Daniel backed away from the door, mind racing. They'd gotten to Mike, turned him into some kind of puppet, which meant they knew everything about the nest, the mine, Dr. Chen's information. He needed to run, but where how the window in his bedroom shattered. Daniel's spun gun raised as a figure in black tactical gear rolled through. He fired twice center mass, but the figure kept coming. Body armor. Before he could adjust his aim, something struck him in the chest, a taser sending electricity coursing through his body. He hit the floor, hard muscles seizing. Through the haze of pain, he saw more figures entering his cabin. 4, 5, 6. Too many to fight, even if he could move. "Secure the laptop," a familiar voice commanded. Agent Cole stepped into view, looking down at him with disappointment. "I warned you, Ranger Mercer. I told you to leave it alone." Daniel tried to speak, but could only manage a groan. "The flash drive," Cole said to one of her men. "Find it." They tore through his cabin, efficient and thorough. Within minutes, they had the drive, his laptop, even his phone, everything that connected him to Dr. Chen's information. "What do we do with him?" one of the men asked. Cole considered. "He's seen too much, but he's also a veteran, a park ranger. His disappearance would raise questions." She knelt beside him as the taser's effects began to wear off. "You have a choice, Ranger Mercer. You can forget everything you've seen, sign some additional paperwork, and go back to your life. Or you can become another missing person in those files you were so interested in." "You're monsters," Daniel managed to gasp. "No. We're the ones keeping the real monsters contained. You have no idea what we're protecting the world from. Those people in the nests aren't people anymore. The transformation is irreversible. We've tried everything. Gene therapy, surgical intervention, even experimental retroviruses. Nothing works. Once Chrysalis takes hold, the subject is lost. But why create them in the first place? Cole stood. That's classified and irrelevant. What matters is that they exist, they're spreading, and we're the only thing standing between them and the general population. The child's jacket, Daniel said. In the nest. Did they take children? For the first time, Cole looked genuinely troubled. We don't know. The transformed subjects. They collect things. Trophies, maybe. Or memories from their former lives. We've never found any transformed children, thank God. You're lying. The voice came from the doorway. Mike stood there, but his eyes were clear now, focused. Tell him the truth, Agent Cole. Tell him about the breeding program. Cole's hand went to her weapon. Stand down, Harrison. You're compromised. No, I'm finally thinking clearly. Mike stepped into the cabin and Daniel saw he was holding a shotgun. 27 years I've kept your secrets. 27 years of watching people disappear, of filing false reports, of pretending not to see. But I'm done. Mike? Daniel struggled to sit up. What are you talking about? Section 7 isn't just where they dump the transformed Danny. It's where they breed them. They're trying to create a stable population, a new species. The nests aren't territorial markers, they're nurseries. That's enough, Cole snapped. Team take Harrison. But Mike was already moving the shotgun, booming in the confined space. One of Cole's men went down, non-lethal rubber bullets, knocking him off his feet. Mike pumped and fired again, but the remaining agents were already returning fire. Daniel watched in horror as Mike's body jerked, blood spreading across his shirt. The older Ranger fell to his knees, the shotgun clattering away. Mike, but... Daniel crawled toward his friend, but strong hands grabbed him, pulling him back. Damn it, Cole muttered. This wasn't supposed to happen. Get Harrison medical attention now. 2 agents rushed to Mike's side, applying pressure to his wounds. But Daniel could see it was too late. There was too much blood. Mike's eyes found Daniel's. The children, he wheezed. They're taking children because they breed true. No transformation needed. Born that way. Shut him up, Cole ordered, but Mike continued. Your soldier friends in Kandahar, Danny. Remember the stories about the things in the caves? Same project. Global. They've been doing this everywhere, creating them, studying them, breeding them. His eyes fluttered closed, and Daniel felt rage explode in his chest. He surged to his feet, throwing off the hands holding him, and lunged at Cole. He got one good punch in splitting her lip before her men tackled him. Enough! Cole wiped blood from her mouth. Sedate him. Full dose. Daniel felt a needle pierce his neck. The world began to blur, sounds becoming distant and distorted. The last thing he heard was Cole's voice. Prep him for transport. He wants to know the truth so badly. Fine. Let him see Chrysalis up close. When Daniel woke, he was in complete darkness. Not the darkness of night, but absolute absence of light. He tried to move and found his wrists and ankles restrained. The surface beneath him was cold metal, and the air smelled of disinfectant and something else, something organic and wrong. Ah, you're awake, a man's voice cultured and calm. Lights flickered on blindingly bright after the darkness. Daniel squinted, trying to see who was speaking. I'm Dr. Marcus Webb, the man said, coming into focus. He was older, perhaps 60, with silver hair and kind eyes that didn't match the horror of the situation. Welcome to Research Station 7. Where am I? Still in the park, actually, about 3 miles underground beneath Section 7. This facility has been here since the 1960s, originally built as a continuity of government bunker. Now it serves a different purpose. Daniel tested his restraints, leather straps professionally applied. He wasn't going anywhere. Agent Cole said you wanted to see Chrysalis up close, Dr. Webb continued. I'm going to grant that wish, but first some context. He wheeled over a monitor, clicking through images as he talked. In 1945, at the end of World War II, American forces discovered a German research facility in Bavaria. The Nazis had been experimenting with what they called evolutionary acceleration, attempting to create super soldiers through forced mutation. Their work was crude, barbaric, but it had produced results. The images showed grainy black and white photos of deformed figures, barely human shapes, twisted into nightmarish forms. Operation Paperclip brought many German scientists to America, including Dr. Ernst Kellner, who had led the mutation research. He continued his work here, refining it, making it more precise. By the 1980s, we had achieved partial success. Subjects could be transformed into something stronger, faster, more resilient than baseline humans. But there were side effects. The nests, Daniel said. Among other things, yes, the transformed subjects exhibited unusual behaviors. Nest building, collecting, singing, especially singing. We never understood why, but they're drawn to children's songs. Some theorize it's a remnant of human memory, the last thing that remains truly human in them. You're talking about them like they're not people anymore. Dr. Webb's expression grew sad. Because they're not, Ranger Mercer. The transformation doesn't just change the body, it rewrites the brain. Higher functions are replaced with instinct. Personality is erased. What remains is something else. Mike said you were breeding them. Ah, yes, poor Mr. Harrison. He never understood the full picture. We're not breeding them, they're breeding themselves. That's what the nests are for. The transformed subjects, when they reach maturity, create these structures and begin collecting items that remind them of humanity. It's a mating display attracting others of their kind. But the children are the most disturbing part. Yes, second-generation subjects, those born from two transformed parents, are different. They appear human at first, can even pass for normal children. But as they age, usually around puberty, the changes begin. And unlike the transformed subjects, they retain their intelligence. They can think, plan, even speak, but they're not human. There's something new. Daniel felt sick. How many Currently, we have 17 second-generation subjects in containment. Worldwide, the estimate is in the hundreds, possibly thousands. Some have escaped our notice, living among the general population. Jesus Christ. Indeed. Now, would you like to see them? What? Dr. Webb moved to the wall, pressing his hand against a scanner. A section of the wall became transparent, not a window, but some kind of advanced display showing the room beyond. Daniel's restraints prevented him from looking away from the horror on the other side of the glass. The room was vast, like an aircraft hangar carved from solid rock, and it was full of nests. Dozens of them, each unique in construction, but following that same mathematical precision Dr. Chen had described. And moving among them were the transformed. They had been human once, that much was clear, but now they were elongated, their limbs two long joints bending in ways that shouldn't be possible. Their skin had a grayish mottled appearance, like tree bark or stone. Their eyes were enlarged, reflecting the light, like a cat's. But it was their movement that was truly unsettling. They didn't walk, they flowed their bodies, undulating in a rhythm that hurt to watch. And they were singing, all of them, a chorus of children's songs that echoed through the chamber. We call this the nursery, Dr. Webb said. It's where we house the transformed subjects who have shown breeding behavior. We monitor them, study them, try to understand them. This is insane. You're playing God. No, we're trying to prevent an extinction event. You see, Ranger Mercer, the transformation is spreading, not through infection or contagion, but through exposure. The transformed subjects emit pheromones, airborne chemicals that trigger dormant genetic sequences in certain humans. Spend enough time near them, and you begin to change. Daniel thought of the masked figures in the forest, the way they'd moved, watched. The people I saw near the nest, early stage transformation most likely. The masks help filter the pheromones, slow the process, but eventually, well, you can see the end result. Why not just kill them all? We tried that. In 1993, we eliminated every known transformed subject. Within 6 months, new ones appeared. The genetic sequences are already in the human population, dormant, waiting. All it takes is the right trigger stress trauma, sometimes just proximity to certain locations. Section 7 is one of those locations. The geology here, the mineral deposits, they act as a catalyst. So you're saying this is natural evolution? Perhaps, or perhaps something else. Dr. Kellner's notes reference something he called the original, a specimen the Nazis found frozen in the Bavarian Alps. They never explained what it was, only that it was old prehistoric maybe, and that its DNA was the template for all their experiments. A movement in the nursery caught Daniel's attention. One of the transformed was approaching the glass, its elongated form moving with that disturbing fluidity. It pressed against the barrier, and Daniel could see its face clearly. It had been a woman once. He could see traces of human features beneath the transformation-high cheekbones, full lips, but the eyes were vast black pools that reflected his image in multiple facets like an insect's. And then it spoke. "Help. Me." Daniel jerked back as much as his restraints allowed. It talked. "They do that sometimes," Dr. Webb said sadly. "Fragments of human memory, human speech. But it's just mimicry like a parrot. There's no consciousness behind it." But the transformed woman pressed harder against the glass, her mouth moving with obvious effort. "Please, my name was Sarah Cole." Daniel's blood froze. "That's impossible. Agent Cole was just—" "That's not Agent Cole," Dr. Webb said quickly. "That subject has been here for 3 years. It's just coincidence, the name." But Daniel wasn't convinced. The transformed subject's eyes locked onto his, and he saw something there, something desperate and aware. "They lie?" it whispered. "All lies." Dr. Webb hit a button, and the glass went opaque. "That's enough for today." "No, wait. What did it mean? What lies?" "It meant nothing. As I said, just mimicry." But Dr. Webb looked troubled. "I think it's time we discussed your future, Ranger Mercer." "My future? You've seen too much to simply be released. Agent Cole, the real Agent Cole, wanted you terminated. I convinced her otherwise. You see, we need people like you, people with military training, survival skills, and most importantly, people who've been exposed to the truth and haven't broken. You want me to work for you. I want you to help us prevent catastrophe. The transformed are growing bolder, more organized. The second-generation subjects are beginning to show signs of collective intelligence. And there are reports of something new, something we haven't seen before." "What?" "Third generation. Subjects bred from second-generation parents. They're almost indistinguishable from humans, can pass every genetic test we have. But they're not human. They're something else, something that might replace us if we're not careful." Daniel stared at him. "You're talking about genocide." "I'm talking about survival, ours or theirs. There has to be another way. If there is, we haven't found it in 40 years of research." Dr. Webb moved to undo Daniel's restraints. "I'm going to release you now. You can try to run, but we're 3 miles underground with multiple security checkpoints. Or you can listen to what I have to offer." The straps came loose and Daniel sat up, rubbing his wrists. Every instinct told him to fight, to run, to do something. But where would he go and who would believe him? "What's your offer?" he asked. "Join us. Become part of the Chrysalis response team. Help us track and contain the transformed, identify potential outbreaks, and maybe, just maybe, find a solution that doesn't end in extinction. And if I refuse, then you become a liability, and liabilities, as Agent Cole explained, get resolved." It wasn't really a choice. Daniel knew that. But maybe if he played along, he could learn more, find evidence, expose this whole thing. "Fine," he said. "I'll join." Dr. Webb smiled. "Excellent. Your training begins immediately." The next hours blurred together. Daniel was given a tour of the facility, shown laboratories where scientists dissected transformed subject cells, where second-generation children were kept, training rooms where response teams prepared for encounters. It was in one of these training rooms that he met her. "Ranger Mercer," a woman's voice called out. He turned to see Agent Cole, the real one, apparently watching him from a catwalk above. "How are you adjusting, trying to process it all, sir?" he admitted. She descended a ladder, moving with athletic grace. Up close, he could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight of whatever she'd seen and done. "I owe you an apology," she said. "For Mike Harrison, that wasn't supposed to happen. He's dead because of you. He's dead because he knew the truth and couldn't handle it. That's why we keep secrets, Ranger Mercer. Most people can't handle reality. Maybe people deserve the chance to try." She laughed bitterly. "You think that now. Give it a few months. See what we really do here, what we have to do, and tell me if you still think the public should know." An alarm suddenly blared through the facility. Red lights flashed, and a computerized voice announced, "Containment breach. Sector 7. All response teams to stations." Cole's demeanor changed instantly, all business. "That's the nursery. Something's wrong." They ran through corridors, joining other personnel heading toward Sector 7. Through windows, Daniel could see the nursery in chaos. The transformed subjects were agitated, throwing themselves against the walls. Their singing turned to screaming. "What's happening?" Daniel asked. "I don't know," Cole admitted. "They've never done this before." Dr. Webb's voice came over the intercom. "All teams, we have a Stage 3 event. Multiple subjects showing synchronized behavior. Possible pheromone surge. Seal all ventilation to Sector 7 immediately." But it was too late. Daniel could already smell it, a sweet, cloying scent that made his skin crawl. Around him, some of the response team members were pulling on masks, but others were already affected, their movements becoming sluggish, strange. "Masks!" Cole shouted, tossing one to Daniel. But as he put it on, he saw her stumble, her hand going to her throat. "Can't breathe," she gasped. Daniel caught her as she fell, but her body was already changing. He watched in horror as her fingers elongated her skin, beginning to model. "No," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Not like this, please, not like this." "What do I do?" Daniel asked desperately. "Kill me," she begged, "before I become one of them, please." Daniel's hand went to his gun, but before he could draw it, Cole's body convulsed. Her scream turned into something else, something inhuman. Her eyes rolled back, showing only white, and when they focused again, they were different, larger, darker. She stood slowly, her body moving with that horrible fluidity. She looked at Daniel, tilted her head, and sang, "Ring around the rosy pocket full of posies." Daniel backed away, his mind reeling. This was how it happened. This was how they transformed, not over weeks or months, but in minutes. All around him, affected team members were changing their bodies, twisting into new shapes. And the transformed subjects in the nursery had stopped screaming. They were watching, waiting. The one that had claimed to be Sarah Cole pressed against the glass again. But now Daniel understood. It hadn't been lying. It really was Sarah Cole, or had been. How many Agent Coles had there been? How many times had they replaced personnel who'd been transformed Dr. Webb? He called into his radio. "We need to evacuate. The entire facility is compromised." "Negative." Webb's voice came back. "Initiate Protocol 7. "What's Protocol 7? "Sterilization. The facility will be flooded with nerve gas in T-minus 5 minutes. All personnel are expendable." Daniel ran. He didn't know where he was going, just that he needed to get out. The transformed Cole thing followed, singing that horrible song, joined by others, as more team members succumbed to the transformation. He found an emergency stairwell, started climbing. 3 miles. 3 miles straight up. He'd never make it. But he had to try. His legs burned. His lungs screamed for air despite the mask. Behind him, he could hear them following their inhuman bodies, moving easily up the stairs. They weren't trying to catch him, he realized. They were hurting him just like in the forest. Finally, impossibly, he saw light above. A hatch sealed, but not locked. He burst through into the forest of Section 7, gasping the clean air. But he wasn't alone. They stood in a circle around the hatch, dozens of them. The masked figures from before, but now he could see they were all in various stages of transformation. Some almost human, others barely recognizable. And in the center of the circle was the nest he'd found that morning. God, was it only that morning? It felt like a lifetime ago. One of the figures approached, removing its mask. The face beneath was human mostly, but the eyes were wrong. Too large, too dark. "Welcome, Ranger Mercer," it said in a voice like grinding stone. "We've been waiting for you." "What do you want?" "To show you the truth. The real truth, not the lies they tell below." "I've seen enough truth for one day." The figure smiled an expression that shouldn't have been possible with its altered features. "No, you've seen their version, now see ours." It gestured to the nest. "This isn't a breeding display or a territory marker. It's a monument, a grave. Every item in there belonged to someone who was taken, transformed against their will, turned into a weapon for their war." Their war? The humans below, they created us, but not for the reasons they claim. "We're not an accident or an evolution. We're soldiers, designed to survive in environments that would kill normal humans. Radiation, chemical weapons, biological agents, we can endure them all. That's impossible. Is it? Your friend Mike Harrison knew. That's why they silenced him. The government isn't trying to contain us, they're perfecting us. Every generation gets better, more controllable, until they have an army that can't be stopped. Daniel's mind reeled. Who was telling the truth? Webb Cole. These creatures, even if you're right, he said, what do you expect me to do about it? Help us, the creature said. You're changing, you know. The exposure in the facility, even with the mask, it started the process. You'll be one of us soon. But you still have time to expose this, to tell the world what's really happening. Daniel looked at his hands. Were they longer than before? Was his skin starting to change, or was it just his imagination? How? He asked. Dr. Chen's data. You still have it, don't you? Not the flash drive they took that. But you uploaded it somewhere, backed it up. You're too smart not to have. They were right. He had uploaded it to a secure cloud server before going to the mine. Force of habit from his military days, always have a backup. If I do this, if I expose everything, what happens to you, to all of you? Maybe we die. Maybe we're hunted down and exterminated, but at least the world will know the truth. At least our transformation will mean something. Below Daniel could hear explosions. The facility was destroying itself. Protocol 7, eliminating all evidence. How many times had they done this? How many facilities were there? I need proof, he said. Documents, evidence, something more than just data files. The creature reached into the nest, pulling out a metal briefcase Daniel hadn't noticed before. Dr. Kellner's original notes, the ones they thought were destroyed. They detail everything the original, the true purpose of Chrysalis, the locations of other facilities worldwide. Daniel took the case, surprised by its weight. How did you get this? We're not mindless Ranger Mercer. We remember who we were, what was done to us. And we've been planning this for years, waiting for someone like you. Someone with the skills and credibility to make the world listen. And if the world doesn't want to hear it, then at least we tried. At least we didn't go quietly into extinction. A distant sound made them all turn. Helicopters approaching fast. They're coming, the creature said. The cleanup teams. They'll sterilize everything within 10 miles. Blame it on a chemical spill or forest fire. You need to go. What about you? Will Scatterhide survive like we always have? But you're our best hope now, Ranger Mercer. Don't waste it. They melted into the forest with that disturbing fluidity, leaving Daniel alone with the briefcase and the weight of terrible knowledge. He ran to his truck, still parked where he'd left it that morning. The engine started on the first try, and he drove like hell, using old logging roads and fire breaks to avoid the main routes. Behind him, he could see smoke rising from Section 7. The cover story was already beginning. It took him 3 hours to reach the nearest city, another 2 to find a motel that accepted cash and didn't ask questions. Only then did he open the briefcase. The documents inside were yellowed with age, written in German and English, but the photographs were clear enough. The original, as Kellner had called it, was a nightmare made flesh, a thing that shouldn't exist, couldn't exist, but somehow did. And according to the notes, it was still alive, kept in cryogenic suspension at a facility in Alaska. More disturbing were the projections. If the transformation continued to spread at its current rate, within 50 years, Homo sapiens would be extinct, replaced by these new beings. The government knew this, had known it for decades, and instead of trying to stop it, they were trying to control it, to shape it, to make sure the creatures that inherited the earth were ones they could command. Daniel looked at his reflection in the motel mirror. His eyes seemed larger, darker. His fingers definitely longer. The transformation was beginning just as the creature had said. He had maybe days, possibly weeks, before it consumed him completely. He opened his laptop, logged into the cloud server, and began typing. The story of Project Chrysalis, of the Nursery of the Truth. Behind the disappeared, he attached Dr. Chen's files, photos of Kellner's documents, everything. But who to send it to? The media could bury it, dismiss it as conspiracy theory. The government would definitely suppress it. He needed someone with reach, credibility, and most importantly, protection. Then he remembered. During his time in Afghanistan, he'd worked with the journalist Alex Rivera, who'd exposed military contractors' crimes, despite death threats and official pressure. Alex now ran an independent news organization dedicated to investigative journalism. If anyone could get this story out, it would be Alex. He composed the email carefully, knowing it might be the last coherent thing he ever wrote. Already his thoughts were becoming strange, filled with urges to build to collect, to sing songs he'd forgotten he knew. As he hit send, his phone rang. Unknown number. "Don't answer that," a voice said from behind him. Daniel spun to find Dr. Chen standing in his motel room. But like everything else in this nightmare, she wasn't quite right anymore. Her transformation was further along than his. Her skin had that bark-like texture, her eyes, those dark pools. "You're one of them," he said. "I've been one of them for 2 years," she admitted. "Everything I told you was true, just not complete. I was a CDC researcher. I did investigate the nests, but I was exposed during my research transformed. The government tried to use me as an asset, a transformed subject who could still think and communicate, but I escaped. So this was all a setup." "No, it was a chance. You're the first person to get the full truth out. The email you just sent will reach Alex Rivera, but it will also trigger automated sends to 50 other journalists worldwide. The story can't be stopped now." "What happens to me?" She moved closer, and he could see sadness in those inhuman eyes. "You transform. You become one of us. But you won't lose yourself, not completely. The second generation, the ones born transformed, they helped us understand. The transformation doesn't destroy the mind, it changes, it expands it. You'll think thoughts that human brains can't process, see patterns that were invisible before." "That doesn't make it better." "No, but it makes it bearable." She moved to the window, looking out at the normal world going about its business. "They're coming for you, the cleanup team. You have maybe 5 minutes. Let them come." "No, you need to survive to be a witness. The story is out there, but without you to verify it, they can deny everything." She handed him a set of keys. "Blue sedan in the back lot. Full tank, clean papers. Drive north. There's a colony of us in Canada hidden safe. You can finish your transformation there among others who understand." "Why help me?" "Because you did what none of us could. You got the truth out while you were still human enough for them to believe." She smiled that impossible expression. "Go. Now." Daniel grabbed the briefcase and his laptop, heading for the door. He paused, looking back at her. "Will I remember who I was, so every moment," she said. "That's both the blessing and the curse." He found the sedan where she'd said started it and drove into the night. In the rearview mirror, he saw black SUVs converging on the motel. But it was too late. The story was out. As he drove, his phone began buzzing with notifications. News alerts, social media explosions, the story spreading like wildfire. Within hours, it was global. Governments scrambling to respond, scientists demanding access to evidence, families of the disappeared demanding answers. But Daniel barely noticed. His hands on the steering wheel were no longer quite human, and his thoughts were filled with patterns and songs and the overwhelming urge to build something beautiful and terrible. By the time he reached the Canadian border using back roads and forgotten crossings, he could no longer pass for human without the heavy clothes and mask the colony provided. But his mind remained clearer than it had ever been. The colony was hidden deep in the British Columbia wilderness, a collection of structures that were part building, part nest. Hundreds of transformed lived there, some recent, like him others, who'd been changed decades ago. They welcomed him as a hero, the one who'd finally exposed the truth. But Daniel didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a witness to the end of one world and the beginning of another. That night, as he helped build a new nest, his hands knowing instinctively how to weave the branches in that mathematical pattern, he thought about Mike Harrison's final words. The children bred, true-born, transformed. And somewhere in the structure of the nest, in the mathematical precision of its construction, he saw it. The pattern that connected everything. The original hadn't been some prehistoric creature the Nazis found. It had been them humans from the future transformed humans who traveled back to ensure their own creation. A temporal loop evolution guided by its own end result. The government knew this, had always known. That's why they couldn't stop it, could only try to control it. The transformation wasn't a mistake or an aberration. It was destiny. Daniel laughed a sound like wind through broken glass and continued building. Tomorrow the world would demand answers. Investigations would begin. Facilities would be exposed. But tonight in the darkness of the Canadian wilderness, the transformed sang their children's songs and built their nests preparing for a future that had already happened, was happening, would always happen. The transformation of humanity had begun long before anyone realized, and Daniel Mercer, park ranger soldier, and now something else entirely, had simply been the one to finally announce it to the world. The news spread faster than any pandemic. Within 12 hours of Daniel's email, every major network was running the story. Leaked photos of the nests, the transformed subjects, the underground facilities, it was everywhere. But the government response was swift and predictable. Mass hysteria, the president's spokesperson said at an emergency press conference. These are clearly doctored images, part of a disinformation campaign by enemies of the state. But the families of the missing wouldn't be silenced. Margaret Chen, whose daughter had vanished on a hiking trip 3 years ago, stood outside the White House with a sign bearing her child's photo. "Where is my baby?" she screamed at the cameras. "What did you do to her?" In the Canadian wilderness, Daniel watched it all unfold on a laptop powered by a generator. His transformation was nearly complete now, his body adapted to its new form. He could move through the trees without sound, see in perfect darkness, and his mind processed information in ways that would have been impossible before. But with each passing hour, he felt his humanity slipping away like sand through elongated fingers. "They're mobilizing," Dr. Chen said, her form barely visible in the shadows of their shelter. "Military units are being deployed to all known colony sites." "Not here," said another transformed one who'd introduced himself as Marcus, though Daniel suspected that hadn't been his original name. "Canada won't allow U.S. military operations on their soil." "They will if they're convinced we're a threat," Daniel replied, his voice now carrying that grinding quality they all shared. "And we are a threat, aren't we, to their vision of humanity's future?" The bitter truth was that the government's lies contained seeds of truth. The transformed were dangerous not because they were violent, but because they were contagious. Simply existing near normal humans long enough would trigger the change. They were a walking extinction event for Homo sapiens. A younger transformed, barely 16 by appearance, though the transformation made age meaningless, approached with a phone. "You need to see this," she said. The screen showed a live feed from a news channel. A woman in a lab coat was speaking to reporters holding up a vial of clear liquid. "My name is Dr. Elizabeth Warren," she said. "I've worked for Project Chrysalis for 15 years, and I can confirm that everything in the leaked documents is true. But there's more. This vial contains what we call the Prometheus serum. It can reverse the transformation if administered within the first 72 hours. Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced since his change. Hope. But Dr. Chen shook her head. "It's a lie," she said. "I've seen their reversal attempts. The subjects died in agony, their bodies unable to handle the strain of changing back." "But what if it's real?" the young transformed asked. "What if they've actually found a cure?" "Then they'll use it as a weapon," Marcus said grimly. "Force it on us whether we want it or not." On screen, Dr. Warren continued. "I'm defecting from the program and releasing this serum formula to the public. But I need help. The transformed subject known as Daniel Mercer, if you're watching this, I need to speak with you. You're the only one who can verify what I'm about to reveal." She held up a photograph. Daniel recognized it immediately, the original, the frozen thing from Kellner's notes. "This creature isn't from Earth," Dr. Warren said, and even the hardened reporters gasped. "It crashed in Antarctica in 1897. The Germans found it in 1939, moved it to Bavaria. And when we inherited the project, we discovered the truth. The transformation isn't random, it's directed. This creature, even in stasis, is psychically affecting human evolution, preparing us for something." "Preparing us for what?" a reporter shouted. "For their arrival. The original isn't alone. It's a scout sending a signal across space. Its species is coming, and when they get here, they'll find a planet full of beings modified to serve them." The colony erupted in chaos. Some transformed wailed in despair, others argued violently. But Daniel stood frozen, his mind racing through the implications. Everything made sense now, the mathematical precision of the nests, the compulsion to build to gather. They were creating landing markers, preparing infrastructure for an invasion. It's another lie, Dr. Chen insisted. They're trying to turn the public against us, make us into alien collaborators. But Daniel wasn't sure. He'd felt it since his transformation, a pull toward something vast and distant, like a whisper at the edge of consciousness. Sometimes in the deep night, he thought he could hear it calling. His phone buzzed. Alex Rivera was calling. "Daniel!" Alex's voice was urgent. "I'm in Seattle with a camera crew. Can you meet? The world needs to see you, hear your story directly." Daniel looked at the other, transformed. "It's a trap," Marcus said immediately. "Maybe. But if I don't go, they control the narrative. Dr. Warren's revelation changes everything. People need to know the truth." "Which truth?" Dr. Chen asked bitterly. "That we're monsters, alien slaves, or just sick people who need to be cured." "That we're still people," Daniel said. "Changed, yes. Different, absolutely, but still people with our own will, our own choices." After hours of debate, it was decided. Daniel would go, but not alone. 3 other transformed would shadow him, ready to intervene if it was indeed a trap. The journey to Seattle took 2 days, traveling only at night, avoiding populated areas where their pheromones might trigger unwanted transformations. Daniel wore heavy clothing, a mask, gloves, anything to hide his changed appearance. But he could feel normal humans' instinctive revulsion when they got too close, their primitive brains recognizing a predator. Alex had chosen Pike Place Market for the meeting, public enough to prevent government interference, crowded enough to allow escape if needed. Daniel arrived just after dawn when the vendors were setting up, but before the tourist crowds arrived. He recognized Alex immediately, older now, gray, threading through his black hair, but still carrying that intense energy that had made him such a good war correspondent. With him was a small camera crew, and surprisingly, Dr. Elizabeth Warren herself. "Daniel," Alex said, then stopped, seeing what little was visible of Daniel's transformed features. "My God, what have they done to you?" "What I've become," Daniel corrected his voice, making several vendors look up in alarm. "This isn't something done to me anymore. It's what I am." Dr. Warren stepped forward, seemingly unafraid. "May I?" she asked, reaching toward his face. Daniel pulled back. "The pheromones, I'm immune," she said, showing him a small device attached to her wrist. "Pheromone neutralizer, my own invention. It's how I survived 15 years working with the transformed." She pulled back his hood, and the camera crew gasped. His transformation was complete, now elongated, skull-dark, multifaceted eyes, skin like tree bark. He was beautiful and terrible, human and inhuman simultaneously. "Tell them," Alex said, camera rolling, "tell the world what happened." So Daniel did. He spoke for an hour, his inhuman voice carrying across the market, drawing a crowd despite themselves. He told them about the nest, Mike Harrison's death, the underground facility. He described the transformation not as horror, but as change, radical and irreversible, but not inherently evil. "We didn't choose this," he said to the camera. "But we're not monsters. We're your brothers, sisters, parents, children, changed but not lost. We remember who we were. We mourn who we've become. But we're still here, still conscious, still deserving of dignity." "What about Dr. Warren's claim?" a brave reporter asked, "about the alien connection." Daniel hesitated, then told the truth. "I feel it, we all do, something calling from far away. But it doesn't control us. We're not slaves or soldiers, we're translators maybe. Bridges between what was and what's coming." "So the aliens are coming?" Alex asked. "Something is coming," Daniel admitted. "But maybe it's not invasion. Maybe it's evolution. Maybe this is how species join a larger community, by changing, adapting, becoming something that can communicate with the universe." Dr. Warren interrupted. "That's a beautiful thought, but the reality is darker. The original species, based on our analysis, are harvesters. They modify planet's dominant species to serve as workers, soldiers, resources. Earth is being prepared for colonization." "You don't know that," Daniel said. "I've studied the original for 15 years. I've decoded parts of its neural patterns. It dreams Ranger Mercer, and I've seen those dreams. Earth transformed humanity, enslaved our planet, just another resource for an interstellar empire. The crowd was growing phones recording everything. Daniel could feel their fear, their revulsion, but also their fascination. He was living proof of everything they'd been told was fake news. "There's something else," Dr. Warren said, pulling out a tablet. "Show them what you found in Section 7. Show them the children." Daniel's transformed features couldn't show traditional expressions, but his body language conveyed his reluctance. The children were the hardest part, the thing that would turn public sympathy to horror. "Do it," Alex urged. "The whole truth." Daniel pulled out his own phone modified to work with his transformed hands and showed them the images. Second-generation transform born that way, looking almost human as children, but slowly changing. And then the third generation, perfect mimics indistinguishable from human until you saw them move, saw the intelligence behind their eyes that was vast and cold and utterly inhuman. "Jesus," someone in the crowd whispered. "They're among us already," Dr. Warren said. "Hundreds, maybe thousands. In our schools, our neighborhoods. And they're waiting for something." "For what?" Alex asked. Before anyone could answer, screams erupted from the crowd. Daniel spun to see figures in black tactical gear pouring into the market. Not government agents, but something worse. Third-generation transform moving with perfect human mimicry until the moment they struck. "It's a culling," Dr. Warren gasped. "They're eliminating witnesses." The attack was swift and brutal. The third generation moved through the crowd like dancers, their touches triggering instant transformation, in some death, in others. Daniel saw Alex go down convulsing as the change took him. Dr. Warren backed against a stall, fumbling with her serum. "No!" Daniel roared, his inhuman voice shattering windows. He moved faster than any human could track, intercepting one of the attackers. They collided with the force of two vehicles crashing through stalls and into the street. The third generation transformed looked up at him with eyes that held no emotion. "Brother," it said in a voice like wind chimes, "why do you protect them?" "Because I was one of them." "You were never one of them. You were always meant to be one of us. The original chose you, marked you from birth. Your transformation was inevitable." Daniel grabbed it by the throat, his strength far exceeding what his original human form could have managed. "We have free will. We can choose." "Can we?" The creature laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "Feel it, brother. Feel the call. It gets stronger every day. Soon you won't be able to resist. None of us will." It was true. Daniel could feel it, that pull towards something vast and approaching, but he fought it, clinging to the fragments of humanity that remained. The other transformed who'd shadowed him joined the fight, but they were outnumbered. The third generation were faster, stronger, more coordinated. And worse, they were triggering transformations throughout the crowd. Within minutes, Pike Place Market had become a war zone. Dr. Warren managed to inject herself with something from her kit, and Daniel watched in fascination as her body began to change, not transforming, but adapting. She moved faster, hit harder, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "Enhanced human," she explained breathlessly. "My own design. It won't last long, but—" A third-generation transformed landed between them, its childlike face terrible in its beauty. "The scientist," it said. "The original has plans for you." Dr. Warren raised a weapon. Daniel hadn't seen her draw, something that looked like crystallized light. She fired, and the third generation screamed, its perfect form dissolving into something that hurt to perceive. "Dimensional destabilizer," she said, "sends them out of phase with our reality, the only thing that truly stops them." But there were too many. For every one they stopped, 3 more appeared. And the transformed humans, those caught in the initial attack, were beginning to rise, confused and hungry for something they couldn't name. "We need to go," Marcus shouted, appearing at Daniel's side. "Now!" They retreated, fighting their way through the chaos. Daniel carried Alex's convulsing form, watching his friend's transformation accelerate with each passing second. By the time they reached Dr. Warren's van, Alex was no longer recognizable as human. "I'm sorry," Daniel whispered, laying him in the back. "Don't be—" Alex gasped, his voice already taking on that grinding quality. I understand now. I see it all. The pattern. Daniel, the invasion already happened. Thousands of years ago. We're not the first wave, we're the last. The cleanup crew before the real colonization begins. Dr. Warren drove while Daniel and the others watched for pursuit. But the third generation had gotten what they wanted: chaos, fear, and most importantly, footage of transformed attacking humans that would play on every news channel. They played us, Daniel realized. This whole thing was orchestrated. By who? Dr. Warren asked. The government, the transformed, the original. All of them, Marcus said grimly. Everyone's playing their own game, and we're all just pieces on the board. They drove north back toward Canada, but the borders were closing. Military checkpoints were being established. The transformation outbreak at Pike Place had given authorities the excuse they needed to declare martial law. There's something I didn't tell you, Dr. Warren said as they stopped at an abandoned rest area. The serum I mentioned, the reversal agent, it's real, but it doesn't reverse the transformation, it accelerates it. Daniel stared at her. What? Full transformation makes you like them, the original species. Not the halfway state you're in, but complete metamorphosis. You become something that can survive in any environment, think in dimensions humans can't perceive exist partially outside normal space-time. Why would anyone want that? Because it's the only way to fight them. When the original species arrives, only the fully transformed will be able to resist them. Everyone else, human and partially transformed alike, will be enslaved. She pulled out a case containing dozens of vials. I've been secretly distributing this to resistant cells worldwide. When the time comes, we'll have an army of fully transformed ready to fight. You're insane, Dr. Chen said. You're talking about deliberately ending humanity. I'm talking about humanity's evolution into something that can survive what's coming. Dr. Warren turned to Daniel. You're the key. The original marked you specifically. Your DNA, your transformation, it's different from the others. You can control them, lead them. Daniel felt the truth of her words in his transformed cells. He was different. The patterns he saw were clear, the call he heard more distinct, and with that clarity came terrible understanding. The original isn't calling its species, he said slowly. It's warning them. Earth is a trap. Humanity is the weapon. We were designed to lure them here, transform them, absorb them into our collective consciousness. Everyone stared at him. Think about it. Daniel continued, his mind racing through possibilities. Why would an advanced species need to physically travel here? Why modify us instead of just eliminating us? Because we're not being prepared for invasion. We're the invasion. Humanity spreads across the galaxy not through ships, but through transformation. Every species we encounter, we absorb, transform, make part of ourselves. That's impossible, Dr. Warren protested. Is it? Look at how quickly the transformation spreads. Look at how we retain consciousness, memory, identity. We're not being replaced, we're being upgraded. And when we encounter other species, we'll upgrade them too. Alex, his transformation now complete, raised his head. I see it, he said in wonder. The pattern. We're a virus, but a beneficial one. We preserve consciousness while adapting biology. Every species we transform becomes part of a growing collective but maintains individuality. A biological singularity, Dr. Warren whispered. My God. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't being conquered, it was becoming the conqueror. The original hadn't crashed on Earth by accident. It had been sent as a catalyst, triggering humanity's metamorphosis into something that could spread across the universe. So what do we do? Marcus asked. If this is all inevitable, if we're all going to transform. Eventually, what's the point of fighting? Daniel looked at his transformed hands, at his changed friends, at Dr. Warren, with her temporary enhancements. We make sure it happens on our terms. We maintain our humanity even as we transcend it. We become something wonderful instead of terrible. And the government. The third generation, the original. We expose them all. Show the world every truth, every lie, every possibility. Let humanity choose its own transformation. Dr. Warren nodded slowly. I have contacts in every major government, scientists who've been questioning the official story. If we coordinate release everything simultaneously, They'll try to stop us, Dr. Chen warned. Let them try, Daniel said. His transformation had taken his human appearance, but not his human spirit. We're not hiding anymore. We're not running. We're going to show the world what's really happening and let them decide what humanity becomes. Over the next days, as they traveled back roads and hidden paths, they built their network. Dr. Warren reached out to her contacts, finding more defectors than expected. Scientists, military personnel, even politicians who'd grown tired of the lies. Daniel and the other transformed made their own connections. The colonies weren't just hiding places, they were communication hubs connected through methods that transcended normal technology. The transformation had given them abilities that seemed like magic, but were simply different applications of physics. They could share thoughts across vast distances, perceive patterns in seemingly random data, even influence probability at quantum levels. They were becoming something that couldn't be contained by conventional means. The third generation transformed were the wild card. They seemed to have their own agenda, neither fully human nor fully transformed. Some joined Daniel's cause, drawn by his unique nature. Others remained loyal to whatever force controlled them. Perhaps the original, perhaps something else. One night, camped in an abandoned mining town, Daniel was approached by one of them. It looked like a child of perhaps 10, but its eyes held centuries of knowledge. "The original wants to meet you," it said simply. Daniel's companions immediately moved to protect him, but he held them back. "Where?" "Alaska, the facility where it's kept. It will be unguarded for exactly 1 hour tomorrow night, a window of opportunity that won't come again." "It's a trap," Marcus said. "Everything's a trap," the child thing replied. "The question is whether the bait is worth the risk." After it left, they debated through the night. It was obviously dangerous, possibly suicidal, but the chance to confront the original to understand its true purpose was too important to ignore. In the end, Daniel went alone despite the protests. He actually flew his transformed body, somehow manipulating electromagnetic fields to achieve levitation. It was one of the abilities he'd discovered recently, one that should have been impossible, but felt as natural as walking once had. The facility was exactly where the child thing had said, a massive complex built into an Alaskan mountain. And true to promise, the defenses were down, the guards absent. Daniel walked through empty corridors, following an instinct he couldn't name. He found it in the deepest vault, suspended in a cylinder of some impossible liquid that existed in too many dimensions at once. The original was smaller than he'd expected, no larger than a human child, but its presence filled the room with terrible weight. When its eyes opened, all 17 of them, Daniel felt his consciousness explode outward, touching every transformed on the planet simultaneously. The original didn't speak in words, but in pure concept, downloading information directly into Daniel's transformed neurons. And what he learned changed everything. Earth wasn't the first. The transformation had happened on thousands of worlds, each time slightly different, each time adding to a growing tapestry of consciousness that spanned the galaxy. It wasn't invasion or evolution, it was art. The universe itself was becoming self-aware through the transformation of its component species. And humanity's role was special, not because they were chosen, but because they had something unique, the ability to maintain individual consciousness within collective awareness. Every other transformed species had become a hive mind. Humans could become something better, a network of individuals united but not uniform. The original showed him futures. Earth fully transformed its inhabitants, living in harmony with physics itself, building cities that existed in multiple dimensions, traveling between stars through pure thought. Or Earth-resistant, fighting the change until environmental collapse and war destroyed everything. Or Earth-transcendent, leading a galactic renaissance of consciousness. "Choose," the original communicated. "You are the catalyst now. Your decision shapes not just Earth's future, but the future of consciousness itself." Daniel understood. His unique transformation, his position between human and transformed, made him a pivot point. He could guide the transformation toward wonder or horror, unity or slavery, transcendence or extinction. "I choose free will," he said aloud. "No forced transformations, no hidden agendas. The truth, all of it, released to everyone. Let each person choose their path." The original's eyes closed, and Daniel felt its approval and its amusement. This too had been anticipated, planned for. Free will was the goal all along. The conspiracy, the fear, the fighting, all of it had been designed to forge humanity into something that could make this choice. When Daniel emerged from the facility, he found the world had changed. The hour he'd spent with the original had been a week outside, and in that week Dr. Warren had released everything. Every document, every video, every piece of evidence. The world's governments had fallen into chaos. Populations were rioting, demanding answers. And the transformed were emerging from hiding, no longer monsters in the shadows, but neighbors asking for understanding. Daniel returned to find his allies had established a headquarters in an abandoned town in Montana. Hundreds had gathered, transformed, partially transformed, and humans working together. Dr. Warren had refined her serum creating versions that allowed controlled transformation, letting people choose how far they wanted to change. Alex, fully transformed now but still recognizably himself in spirit, had become their spokesperson, using his journalism skills to craft messages that resonated across cultural and biological boundaries. "We're winning," he told Daniel. "Not the war, there is no war. We're winning the conversation. People are starting to understand that this isn't about us versus them. It's about what we all become together." But the government forces were mobilizing. Military units surrounded known colony sites. The president had declared a state of emergency, calling the transformation a disease that needed to be cured. And somewhere out there, the third generation transformed were planning something. Daniel could feel it through the growing network of consciousness, a storm approaching a climax to everything that had begun with a nest in the woods. They're going to attack the capitals. A newly transformed sensitive reported their consciousness touching the edges of the third generation network. Washington, London, Moscow. Beijing, simultaneous strikes designed to trigger mass transformation. When? Daniel asked. Tomorrow night. They had less than 24 hours to prevent a catastrophe that would turn the transformation from evolution into apocalypse. But how could they stop beings that existed partially outside normal space-time that could phase through matter that were in many ways more advanced than even the fully transformed Daniel made a decision that would have been unthinkable weeks ago? "We don't stop them, we join them." Everyone stared at him in shock. "Not to attack," he explained quickly. "To transform the narrative. They want to trigger mass transformation through fear and violence. We trigger it through choice and wonder. We show the world what transformation can really be." It was insane, impossible, and their only hope. That night, as military forces prepared for war and the third generation prepared for attack, Daniel and his allies prepared for something else entirely. They would transform not through force, but through invitation. They would show humanity its future and let each person decide whether to embrace it. The transformation of humanity had begun with a nest in the woods. Tomorrow, it would culminate in a choice that would echo across the cosmos. Daniel stood at the edge of the town, watching the stars, feeling the original's presence like a distant song. Whatever tomorrow brought humanity would never be the same. The only question was whether it would become something wonderful or terrible, and that choice ultimately belonged to everyone. The dawn came too quickly. Daniel stood with his assembled allies on a ridge overlooking the valley, where they'd made their stand, watching military vehicles position themselves in the distance. The government's response had been swift and predictable: surround, contain, eliminate. But they didn't understand that containment was impossible now. The transformation had reached a tipping point. Dr. Warren approached her enhanced form, shimmering slightly in the morning light. The serum she'd taken was wearing off, and she'd have to choose soon: return to baseline humanity or embrace a permanent change. "The third generation transformed are moving," she reported. "Our contacts in the capitals report unusual electromagnetic disturbances. They're preparing to phase in simultaneously at 8 p.m. local time in each city." "And our people?" Daniel asked. "Ready, though I'm not sure they understand what you're asking them to do." Daniel wasn't sure he understood it himself. The plan had come to him during his communion with the original, not as words, but as pure knowledge. They would create what he called a revelation event. Instead of forced transformation through violence, they would offer humanity a glimpse of what it could become. Every transformed would open their consciousness, simultaneously creating a psychic network that anyone could choose to join. Alex joined them, his transformed features somehow managing to convey skepticism. "The news networks are calling us terrorists. The president just authorized lethal force against any transformed found in populated areas." Fear makes people dangerous, Daniel acknowledged. But wonder makes them curious. We need to tip the balance. A young transformed ran up to them breathless, despite not needing to breathe in the traditional sense anymore. Daniel, there's someone here to see you. She says she's from the government, but she's different. The woman who emerged from the morning mist was indeed different. She wore a standard government suit, but her movements were too fluid, her eyes too knowing. When she spoke, Daniel recognized the harmonics of partial transformation. Ranger Mercer, she said formally. I'm Director Patricia Stone, National Security Council. I'm here to negotiate. There's nothing to negotiate, Tim, Daniel replied. The transformation can't be stopped. I know, that's not what I'm here to discuss. She looked around at the assembled transformed, showing no fear, despite being surrounded by beings that could kill her in seconds. I'm here because not everyone in the government is blind to reality. Some of us have been preparing for this day knowing it would come. Preparing how? By undergoing controlled transformation ourselves. She pulled back her sleeve, revealing skin that showed the telltale modeling of change. There are hundreds of us at all levels of government and military. We've been waiting for the right moment to reveal ourselves. Dr. Warren stepped forward, scanner in hand. That's impossible. We would have detected. You detected what we wanted you to detect, Stone interrupted. We learned to mask the pheromone signature to pass as human while slowly changing. We're not your enemy, Ranger Mercer. We're trying to prevent a massacre. Why should we trust you, Marcus demanded. Stone smiled, and her face briefly shifted, revealing the transformed structure beneath before snapping back to human appearance. Because in 6 hours, when the third generation attack, the president is planning to launch Project Chrysalis. Nuclear strikes on every known transformation site, including this one. The only way to stop it is from the inside. The assembled transformed reacted with alarm, but Daniel remained calm. He'd felt this possibility in the probability streams, one of many futures branching from this moment. What do you propose? He asked. Coordination. When you launch your revelation event, we reveal ourselves simultaneously. Show the world that transformation isn't just monsters in the woods, it's senators, generals, teachers, doctors, people they know and trust. And the third generation? We handle them our way. Stone pulled out a device Daniel recognized similar to Dr. Warren's dimensional destabilizer, but more refined. We've been developing countermeasures, not to destroy them, but to communicate with them. They're not evil, just confused, caught between two states of being. It was a risk trusting someone who'd been hiding among the very people trying to destroy them, but Daniel could sense truth in her words through the growing psychic network. She was genuinely transformed, genuinely trying to help. All right, he decided. We coordinate. But if this is a trap, it's not, Stone assured him. We're all in this together now. She gave them communication codes and tactical information before departing, promising that when the moment came, the transformed within the government would act. The hours that followed were frantic with preparation. Daniel worked with the other transformed to strengthen their psychic network, teaching them to project not fear, but wonder. Dr. Warren refined her serums, creating variants that would allow for gradual transformation, giving people time to adjust. Alex coordinated with his media contacts, preparing to broadcast their message when the moment came. As the sun reached its zenith, military forces began advancing on their position. But they didn't attack, not yet. They were waiting for something. Daniel, Dr. Chen called out, her voice tight with concern. The original, it's active. The facility in Alaska is reporting massive energy readings. Daniel felt it too, a pulse through the psychic network like a heartbeat speeding up. The original was preparing for something, its consciousness expanding beyond its physical prison. Then, unexpectedly, a helicopter appeared over the ridge, not military, but civilian bearing news markings. It landed roughly and outstepped someone Daniel hadn't expected to see again. Margaret Chen, the mother who'd been protesting outside the White House, emerged with tears streaming down her face. But following her was a young girl, perhaps 9 years old, with features that were almost but not quite human. My daughter, Margaret sobbed. They gave her back to me. Said she was in a special program. Said she was sick, but look at her. The girl third generation Daniel realized approached without fear. Her eyes held that vast intelligence he'd seen in others of her kind, but also something else: innocence, curiosity, love for her mother. "Hello," she said to Daniel, her voice carrying impossible harmonics. "The original says you're important. It says you're going to help us all go home." "Home?" Daniel knelt to her level. "Where is home?" "Everywhere," she replied simply. "We don't belong to one place or one time. We belong to the universe itself. But first we need to help the scared people understand." Margaret Chen looked between her transformed daughter and Daniel. Is she still my baby?" "She is," Daniel assured her. "Changed, evolved, but still your daughter, still capable of love." It was proof of what they'd been trying to tell the world. Transformation didn't mean losing humanity. It meant expanding it. But there was no more time for reunions. Across the psychic network, Daniel felt the third generation transformed beginning their attack. Not physically, not yet, but psychically, reaching out to touch every human mind within range of the capital cities. "Now," Daniel commanded. Every transformed in the compound, hundreds of them joined their consciousness together. But instead of forcing their way into human minds, they offered an invitation. A glimpse of what transformation could mean: not horror, but wonder. Not loss, but expansion. Daniel felt his consciousness fracture and multiply, touching millions of minds simultaneously. Through him, humanity saw the universe as the transformed saw it. Patterns within patterns, dimensions beyond dimensions, beauty beyond human comprehension, but not beyond human appreciation. In Washington, the president stood in the Situation Room, his finger hovering over the authorization for nuclear strikes. But around him, his advisors were changing. Not transforming physically, but revealing transformations that had already occurred. Director Stone stood beside him, her human disguise falling away. "Mr. President," she said gently, "look, really look, we're not your enemy." The same scene played out in capitals worldwide. Transformed. Who'd been hiding revealed themselves not as monsters, but as colleagues, friends, family members who'd undergone a change but retained their essential selves. The third generation's attack faltered. They'd expected to find minds full of fear and hatred ready to be pushed into panic. Instead, they found curiosity, wonder, and increasingly acceptance. Their psychic assault became a psychic conversation. But not everyone was ready for revelation. In bunkers and command centers, hardliners who couldn't accept the new reality gave orders. Military units that hadn't been infiltrated by the transformed opened fire. Missiles launched. The war everyone had feared began, but it was chaos rather than coordinated assault. Daniel felt each death through the network transformed, cut down by bullets that their partially changed bodies couldn't resist humans caught in crossfire third-generation beings, destabilized by Dr. Warren's weapons. Each loss was agony magnified by psychic connection. "We're losing..." Marcus gasped, blood seeping from wounds that wouldn't heal. "They're too afraid. They'd rather destroy everything than accept change." But then something unprecedented happened. The original moved. Not physically, its body remained in the Alaska facility, but its consciousness, ancient and vast, touched every human and transformed mind on the planet simultaneously. And it showed them the truth Daniel had seen: the galactic community of consciousness worlds transformed not into nightmare, but into wonder species that had transcended physical limitation while maintaining individual identity. More importantly, it showed them the alternative. Worlds that had resisted transformation until environmental collapse. Species that had chosen extinction over evolution. The lonely graves of civilizations that had been too afraid to change. Choose to. The original communicated to every human simultaneously, but choose knowing the full truth. The effect was immediate and divisive. Some humans faced with the cosmic perspective embraced transformation willingly. Others recoiled, clinging to familiar humanity. But the fighting slowed, then stopped, as everyone grappled with the enormity of what they'd learned. In the compound, Dr. Warren made her choice. She injected herself with the permanent transformation serum, her body shifting and changing as she crossed the threshold from enhanced human to something beyond. "I can see it now," she whispered in wonder. "The patterns. How did I ever think this was horrible?" But not everyone was convinced. Through the news feeds, Daniel watched as populations divided. Some cities opened their arms to the transformed, setting up integration centers where humans and transformed could coexist. Others declared themselves transformation-free zones, using Dr. Warren's dimensional destabilizers to create barriers that transformed couldn't cross. The world was fracturing, but not into war, into choice. Margaret Chen's daughter tugged on Daniel's elongated hand. "This isn't how it's supposed to happen," she said, her young voice carrying ancient wisdom. "The division will destroy both sides." She was right. Daniel could see it in the probability streams. Humanity divided would weaken both factions. The transformed would become increasingly alien without human grounding. The unchanged humans would stagnate, unable to adapt to a universe that was itself evolving. Then we bridge the gap, Daniel decided. We become the interface. He reached out through the network, not to all transformed or all humans, but to those caught between the partially transformed like himself in the early stages, the enhanced humans using Dr. Warren's serums, the third generation who could pass as human. They would become living bridges between the two diverging branches of humanity. But even as this new plan formed, a darker truth emerged. Director Stone contacted them with urgent intelligence. "The hardliners have activated something called Protocol Omega," she reported. "It's not nuclear, it's biological. A retrovirus designed to reverse transformation at the genetic level." Dr. Warren, still adjusting to her new transformed state, analyzed the data Stone transmitted. "This is based on my work," she said in horror. "But weaponized. It won't just reverse transformation, it will kill anyone with any trace of the transformed genome." "That's genocide," Alex said. "It would kill millions." "Billions," Dr. Warren corrected. "The transformation markers have spread through the entire human population. Everyone has them dormant or active. This virus would extinct humanity." The revelation changed everything. This wasn't about transformed versus human anymore. It was about survival of any kind. "Where's the virus?" Daniel demanded. "Multiple sites set for simultaneous release in 12 hours. We've identified 3, but there are at least 7 more." Daniel made a decision that would have seemed impossible days ago. He opened his consciousness fully to the network, not just to transformed, but to everyone. Humans, transformed, third generation, everyone connected. "Listen to me," he broadcast psychically. "All of you. We face extinction not from transformation, but from those who would rather see humanity die than change. We need to work together. Human military to locate the sites, transformed to neutralize the virus, third generation to phase through defenses. Together, or we all die." The response was mixed but enough. Military units that had been fighting transformed suddenly found themselves working alongside them. Scientists, human and transformed, collaborated on countermeasures. The third generation, finally given purpose beyond confusion, became scouts and saboteurs. The next 12 hours were the longest in human history. Teams of mixed human and transformed struck at viral storage sites worldwide. Some succeeded, others failed. The virus was released in Berlin and Mumbai before teams could stop it, but transformed with their altered biology proved immune and were able to contain the spread, saving human populations, even as humans elsewhere destroyed virus samples before they could harm transformed. In the end, 7 sites were neutralized. 3 released contained amounts of virus. The death toll was in the thousands rather than billions, but each death was felt through the network, each loss mourned by both human and transformed consciousness. As dawn broke on the second day after the revelation event, the world had changed irrevocably. Not into the unified transformation Daniel had hoped for or the divided camps the governments had planned, but something messier, more complex, more real. Cities declared themselves sanctuary zones where human and transformed coexisted. Others remained purely human, using technology to maintain barriers. The transformed established colonies that served as embassies between the species humanity was becoming. Daniel stood in the Montana compound, now a refugee center for both transformed fleeing persecution and humans fleeing forced transformation zones. The neat narrative of evolution had given way to chaotic reality. "We failed," Marcus said, standing beside him. This isn't the transcendent future the original showed us. No, Daniel agreed. It's better, because it's chosen, not forced, messy, not predetermined. Dr. Chen approached her transformation complete, but her medical instincts intact. We have a problem. The children, the third generation, they're dying. Daniel followed her to the medical facility where Margaret Chen sat beside her daughter. The girl was fading, her remarkable vitality dimming. They were designed for a fully transformed world, Dr. Chen explained. In this mixed reality, they can't stabilize. They need complete transformation or complete humanity, not this middle ground. It was the cruelest irony. The beings that bridged both worlds couldn't survive in a world that was itself bridged. Margaret Chen looked up at Daniel with desperate eyes. "Save her, please!" Daniel knelt beside the child, touching her with his transformed hand while his consciousness reached into her failing biology. He could see the problem. Her existence depended on a unified field of consciousness that the divided world couldn't provide. "Unless I can save her," he said slowly, "but it will change everything. Again." He explained his idea. The third generation weren't dying because the world was divided. They were dying because they were incomplete. They needed not transformation or humanity, but synthesis. True fusion of both states. Dr. Warren's serums, the original's consciousness, the third generation's nature, we combine them all. Create not transformed or human, but something genuinely new. "That's never been tried," Dr. Warren protested. "We don't know what it would create." "We know what not trying creates." Daniel gestured to the dying child. "Death, extinction, the end of possibility." Margaret Chen grabbed his hand. "Do it." What followed was the most complex procedure ever attempted. Dr. Warren synthesized new compounds while Daniel channeled the original's vast knowledge. Dr. Chen provided medical expertise while the third-generation children themselves, through their shared consciousness, guided the process. The first injection went to Margaret's daughter. Her body convulsed, shifted, stabilized. When she opened her eyes, they were neither human nor transformed, but something that had never existed before. She could shift between states at will, be human when she chose, transformed when needed, or something in between. "How do you feel?" her mother asked tearfully. The girl considered. "Complete," she said simply. Word spread through both human and transformed networks. The synthesis was possible. Not transformation or resistance, but conscious choice of state. Within hours, volunteers arrived, humans wanting to explore transformation without losing themselves transformed, wanting to reconnect with their humanity. But the governments weren't ready for this new development. The synthesis beings, as they became known, were even more threatening than pure transformed. They could infiltrate either society bridge, any gap, resist any containment. Director Stone arrived at the compound with urgent news. "The UN Security Council is meeting. They're going to declare synthesis beings a threat to both human and transformed survival. They want them eliminated." "They're children," Margaret Chen said, holding her daughter. "Their evolution," Stone replied. "And that terrifies everyone." Daniel felt the weight of decision again. They could fight, use their growing abilities to resist. Or, "We leave," he said suddenly. "Not Earth, but this current paradigm. The synthesis beings, the transformed who choose it. We establish ourselves as a third option, not human or transformed, but something new." "Where would we go?" Alex asked. Daniel smiled, his transformed features managing the expression. "Everywhere. The original showed me there are places between dimensions, spaces outside normal reality. We become interdimensional, existing alongside, but not within either human or transformed society." It was radical, impossible, and perfect. Dr. Warren began working on the technology immediately, using knowledge gained from the original and the synthesis process. Within days, they had a prototype, a way to phase partially out of standard reality, existing in a parallel space that touched but didn't intrude on the normal world. The exodus began quietly. Synthesis beings transformed who chose it, and humans ready for true change gathered at sites worldwide. Using the modified technology, they shifted into what became known as the synthesis realm, a dimension where thought shaped reality, where the barriers between human and transformed individual and collective dissolved into pure potential. Daniel was among the last to leave standing at the threshold between worlds. The government forces surrounded the compound, but they couldn't attack something that was no longer fully there. Director Stone approached one final time. Is this really the answer, running away? Not running, Daniel corrected. Evolving. We'll still be here just sideways from you, available if needed, invisible if not. The bridge between worlds that both sides need but neither wants to acknowledge. She nodded slowly. The president wants to know, will you interfere with human or transformed affairs? Only if asked. We're not conquerors or saviors. We're possibility itself, waiting for the moment when either side is ready to evolve further. With that, Daniel stepped through the dimensional barrier, joining the others in the synthesis realm. From there, he could see both Earth's realities, the human world continuing its technological progress, the transformed world exploring biological transcendence. And between them, invisible but essential, the synthesis beings maintained balance. But even as this new equilibrium established itself, Daniel knew it was temporary. The original's message had been clear: something was coming from beyond Earth, beyond the solar system. The true test of humanity's evolution, whether human transformed or synthesis, was yet to come. In the synthesis realm, Margaret Chen's daughter tugged on his sleeve again. She'd grown in the strange way synthesis beings did, not physically, but dimensionally, her consciousness expanding while her form remained childlike. They're almost here, she said, pointing to something only she could see. The original's people. They'll arrive soon. How soon? Soon enough that we need to be ready. All of us human transformed in synthesis. Daniel nodded, understanding. The transformation crisis had been preparation, forcing humanity to evolve rapidly enough to face what was coming. Whether they were ready or not would determine not just Earth's fate, but the fate of consciousness itself in this corner of the universe. Standing in the synthesis realm, existing between all states of being, Daniel felt the weight and wonder of what humanity had become. Not one species, but three, perhaps more, each exploring different paths to transcendence. It was messy, complicated, and dangerous. It was also magnificent. The ranger who'd found a strange nest in the woods was gone, transformed beyond recognition. But his purpose remained to protect, to preserve, to guide. Only now his forest was the cosmos itself, and the trails he walked existed in dimensions human minds couldn't yet comprehend. Somewhere in the normal world, a child would be born carrying the dormant genes for transformation. Somewhere else, a transformed would achieve new levels of consciousness. And in the spaces between the synthesis beings would watch, wait, and prepare. The transformation of humanity was complete. Its true evolution had just begun. 6 months had passed since the synthesis beings established their interdimensional realm, and the three branches of humanity had settled into an uneasy coexistence. Daniel moved between worlds, now serving as messenger and mediator, his unique nature allowing him to traverse realities that others could only glimpse. But tonight, standing at the intersection of dimensions where all three realms touched, he felt the universe shift. They were here. The first sign was a resonance through the psychic network, like a tuning fork struck in the depths of space. Every transformed felt it, every synthesis being sensed it, and even baseline humans experienced it as an inexplicable anxiety, a primitive awareness that something vast was approaching. Daniel materialized in the Montana compound, now a neutral zone where representatives from all three humanities could meet. Director Stone was already there, her partially transformed features tight with concern alongside Dr. Warren, whose synthesis transformation had given her abilities that defied conventional physics. How long? Stone asked without preamble. 3 days. Daniel replied, the knowledge flowing through him from the original's consciousness. Maybe less. They're not using conventional travel anymore. They're folding space itself. Alex arrived moments later, his ability to broadcast across all spectrums of consciousness, making him invaluable as a communicator. The worlds are panicking. Human governments are mobilizing their militaries, transformed colonies are retreating deeper into wilderness, and the synthesis beings, he paused, they're singing. It was true. Daniel could hear it through the dimensional barriers, a harmony that existed in frequencies beyond normal perception. The synthesis, children led by Margaret Chen's daughter, were preparing a welcome that transcended language or culture. They're not coming to invade, the girl said, appearing suddenly as synthesis beings could stepping out of nowhere into everywhere. They're coming to evaluate. Dr. Warren pulled up holographic displays that showed energy readings from around the solar system. Whatever they are, they're massive. The gravitational distortions alone suggest ships the size of small moons. Not ships, Daniel corrected his connection to the original, providing clarity. They are living beings. The original species doesn't separate biology from technology. They are their vessels. The revelation sent ripples of fear through everyone present. How could Earth's divided humanity hope to face beings that had transcended the very distinction between organic and artificial? President Morrison appeared on the communication screen, his face haggard from months of managing a fractured nation. Behind him stood the Joint Chiefs representatives from both human and transformed military forces. Mercers, he said without greeting. I'm told you have the clearest connection to these entities. What do they want? To judge whether Earth's consciousness is ready to join the galactic community, or, Daniel hesitated, or whether we need to be restructured. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Everyone understood what restructuring meant. Forced evolution, the elimination of choice, the end of humanity's diverse paths. We need unity, Director Stone said urgently. The three humanities must present a united front or they'll see us as failed evolution. Unity. One of the transformed representatives, a being whose name was a pattern rather than a word, rippled with disagreement. Humans still hunt us. They still fear us. How can we unite with those who see us as monsters? And how can we unite with those who would transform us against our will, countered General Hayes from the human delegation. The argument that erupted was familiar, the same conflicts that had driven humanity apart, playing out again. But Daniel noticed Margaret Chen's daughter watching with those impossible eyes that saw beyond the present moment. What is it? He asked her quietly. They're already here, she whispered. Not physically, but watching. This argument, this division, it's part of the test. Daniel understood immediately. The approaching beings weren't waiting 3 days to evaluate Earth. The evaluation had already begun. He stepped into the center of the room, his form shifting between states. Human transformed synthesis, demonstrating the possibility of unity in a single being. Stop, he commanded, his voice resonating across all spectrums of consciousness. Everyone turned to him, and in that moment of attention, he shared what the child had shown him. Through the psychic network, through synthesis, perception, through pure human intuition, they all saw it. The watching presence, ancient and patient, observing their every choice. The test isn't about being united, Daniel explained. It's about how we handle our divisions. Do we let them destroy us, or do we find strength in diversity? Dr. Warren was the first to understand. Of course, a monoculture would be weak, vulnerable to single-point failures. But a diverse consciousness, even a divided one, has resilience. The original stirred in its Antarctic prison, its thoughts touching Daniel's. It showed him visions of other worlds, some that had achieved perfect unity and stagnated, others that had remained divided and grown strong through constant challenge and adaptation. Then what do? President Morrison asked. We show them who we really are, Daniel replied. Not united, but connected. Not the same, but working together despite our differences. The plan that emerged over the next hours was unprecedented. Rather than hiding their divisions or pretending unity, the three humanities would demonstrate their interconnected diversity. Each group would present their perspective, their achievements, their dreams for the future. And the synthesis beings would serve as translators, bridging gaps in understanding. As they prepared, reports came in from around the world. The approaching entities were becoming visible to human instruments, not ships or objects, but distortions in space itself, as if reality was being gently folded by impossible hands. In Beijing, transformed colonies emerged from hiding to work alongside human scientists, combining inhuman perception with human technology to better understand what was coming. In London synthesis, beings created buffer zones where humans nervous about transformation could interact safely with transformed individuals. In Moscow, the government officially recognized all three humanities as legitimate citizens, a legal framework that had been unthinkable weeks before. But not everyone embraced cooperation. Extremist factions on all sides saw the arrival as an opportunity. Human supremacists planned to use the aliens' arrival to justify exterminating the transformed. Radical transformed planned to call for the forced evolution of all humanity. And somewhere in the spaces between a group of synthesis beings contemplated transcending physical reality, entirely abandoning Earth for dimensions unknown. Daniel found himself racing between crisis points, preventing violence here, encouraging cooperation there. He was exhausted in ways that transcended physical tiredness, his consciousness stretched across multiple dimensions, his sense of self fragmenting under the strain. It was Alex who noticed his deterioration. "You're burning out," his friend said, his transformed features managing concern. "You can't hold all of this together by yourself." "Someone has to," Daniel replied, but even he heard the desperation in his voice. "No, Margaret Chen's daughter said, appearing beside them. "Everyone has to, that's the point." She was right. Daniel had been trying to be the sole bridge, the single point of connection between humanities. But that was exactly the wrong approach. The strength wasn't in having one bridge, but in having millions, every small connection, every moment of understanding between human and transformed, every choice to reach across difference. He let go, not of responsibility, but of control. And in that letting go, something beautiful happened. The network of consciousness that connected all transformed expanded, but gently offering rather than taking. Humans found they could touch it without losing themselves, glimpse the transformed perspective without being consumed by it. Synthesis beings became not bridges, but examples showing that multiple states could exist in harmony within a single being. On the second day, with the entities now visible as aurora-like phenomena in the sky, something unexpected happened. Children around the world. Human children began to dream the same dream. They saw Earth from impossible perspectives, witnessed the beauty of transformation and the strength of human stubbornness, felt the potential of synthesis. They woke speaking of colors that didn't exist and sounds that couldn't be heard, but somehow made perfect sense. Dr. Chen, studying the phenomenon, made a startling discovery. The children aren't being influenced, they're remembering. Genetic memory from the original's first contact with Earth thousands of years ago. Humanity has always carried the potential for this moment. The dream spread to adults transformed and human alike, not visions of invasion, but of invitation. The entities weren't coming to judge, but to welcome if Earth proved ready. But readiness didn't mean perfection. As the final day approached, conflicts still erupted. A human military unit attacked a transformed colony in Argentina, killing dozens before synthesis beings could intervene. A group of transformed released pheromones in Tokyo, triggering involuntary transformations before being stopped. The violence was real, the divisions genuine. Yet the response to these failures proved more important than the failures themselves. Humans rushed to provide medical aid to wounded, transformed. Transformed helped reverse unwanted transformations where possible, accepting the choice of those who preferred humanity. Synthesis beings worked tirelessly to heal both physical and psychological wounds. When the entities finally arrived, not landing but manifesting reality, bending around them like water around stones, they found Earth's three humanities not united but actively choosing connection despite division. The first entity to fully manifest was beautiful and terrible, a being of crystallized space and living time. When it spoke, every consciousness on Earth heard it in their own way. Humans heard words, transformed, felt concepts. Synthesis beings experienced pure meaning. "You are divided," it said, neither condemnation nor approval in its tone. "We are," Daniel replied, speaking for no one but somehow representing everyone. "We are divided and connected, separate and together, three paths diverging from one source." "This is unstable," the entity observed. "Most species achieve unity or destroy themselves." "Most species aren't us," Margaret Chen's daughter said, stepping forward with the confidence of innocence. "We're messy." If a being of crystallized space could express amusement, this one did. "Yes, you are unprecedented. Three evolutionary paths coexisting despite conflict. Why? It was President Morrison who answered, surprising everyone. Because we're stubborn. Too stubborn to give up on our humanity, too stubborn to stop evolving, too stubborn to choose just one path. And if this stubbornness leads to your destruction, then will be the most interesting extinction in galactic history. Alex broadcasted his transformed humor, somehow translating across all consciousness. The entity contemplated its form shifting through dimensions humans couldn't perceive. Other entities manifested around the globe, each observing different aspects of Earth's divided unity. They watched humans and transformed work together despite fear, saw synthesis beings sacrifice their transcendent potential to help both sides witness moments of breathtaking cooperation and heartbreaking conflict. Finally, the first entity rendered its verdict. You are not ready for full inclusion in the galactic community. The despair that rippled across Earth was palpable, but the entity continued. You are, however, ready for something else, something new. The galaxy has united species and divided species, transcendent species, and extinct species. But never before have we encountered a species that maintains multiple evolutionary paths simultaneously. You offer something unique, a laboratory of consciousness, a testing ground for possibilities we haven't imagined. What does that mean? Daniel asked. It means Earth becomes a protected space, a reserve where your three paths can develop without interference, but also without isolation. We will establish embassies, exchange knowledge, learn from your divisions as you learn from our unity. Dr. Warren stepped forward. You're saying we're too interesting to absorb or abandon. Precisely. Your chaos may be the key to problems we haven't solved in millions of years of unity. The relief was overwhelming, but so was the responsibility. Earth wouldn't be conquered or elevated. It would be preserved as something unique, valuable, precisely because of its divisions. Over the following days, the entities established their embassy structures that existed in all three realms, simultaneously accessible to human, transformed, and synthesis beings alike. They shared technology that seemed like magic biology, that defied physics, philosophy, that reconciled contradictions Earth's thinkers had struggled with for centuries. But they also learned. The entities, for all their transcendence, had lost something in their unity. They watched in fascination as humans created art from limitation, as transform built beauty from instinct, as synthesis beings danced between states. Earth's divided humanity taught them about resilience through conflict growth, through challenge, strength, through diversity. Daniel found himself appointed as Earth's first ambassador to the galactic community, not representing any one humanity but all three. It was a role he hadn't sought but couldn't refuse. His unique nature, transformed by circumstance and choice, made him the perfect translator between worlds. Standing in the primary embassy, a structure that existed in 12 dimensions simultaneously, he met with the entity that had first judged Earth. Your species surprises us, it admitted. We expected to find either unity or chaos. Instead, we found structured discord, organized chaos, cooperative competition. We surprise ourselves, Daniel replied. 6 months ago, I was just a park ranger who found a strange nest. Now I'm this. And yet you remain essentially yourself. That too is unique. Most transformation erases the original. Yours enhances it. They spoke of the future trade agreements between humanities and the galaxy, cultural exchanges that would challenge all parties, the possibility that Earth's model might inspire other worlds to embrace diversity rather than forced unity. But even as these grand plans took shape, daily, life continued. Margaret Chen still worried about her transformed daughter's education. President Morrison still faced criticism for his handling of the crisis. Dr. Warren still worked late into the night trying to understand synthesis biology. The transformation of humanity hadn't ended with unity or division, it had evolved into something more complex. Three humanities connected by choice, rather than force, each pursuing their own path while acknowledging their common origin. In the transformed colonies, beings that had once been human built cities that grew like forests, organic structures that breathed and thought. They developed new forms of art music that could only be heard through psychic connection sculptures that existed in probability rather than matter. In human cities, technology advanced in unexpected directions. Inspired by transformed biology, scientists created machines that could heal themselves, computers that could dream. The barrier between organic and artificial began to blur not through transformation, but through innovation. In the synthesis realm, beings who were neither and both explored possibilities that neither human nor transformed could achieve alone. They became living bridges not just between Earth's humanities, but between Earth and the galaxy. But challenges remained. Not everyone accepted the new reality. Human extremists still hunted transformed. Radical transformed still forced unwanted changes. Synthesis beings sometimes lost themselves in the spaces between becoming something that wasn't quite any of the three. It was during one crisis, a human military unit had cornered a transformed family, while transformed reinforcements threatened to trigger a massacre, that Daniel realized the true nature of Earth's evolution. Standing between the two forces, shifting between forms to show both sides their common heritage, he spoke not with authority, but with exhaustion. "I'm tired," he said simply. "Tired of being the bridge, tired of preventing you from killing each other, tired of pretending we're better than we are." Both sides paused, weapons still raised, but no longer aimed. "We're not united," Daniel continued. "We're not evolved. We're not transcendent. We're scared, divided, confused beings trying to make sense of a universe that suddenly got much bigger and stranger. And that's okay." A human soldier lowered his weapon first. "I didn't sign up to kill families," he said quietly. A transformed being retracted its claws. "We only wanted to protect our young." In that moment of mutual recognition, not of unity, but of shared fear and confusion, the real transformation occurred. Not biological or technological, but emotional. The acknowledgement that division didn't require hatred, that difference didn't demand destruction. The incident became a turning point, not ending all conflict, but changing its nature. Disputes continued, but with new frameworks for resolution. The three humanities established joint councils not to govern, but to mediate. Rules of engagement that acknowledged the legitimacy of all three evolutionary paths. A year after first contact, Daniel stood again, where it had all begun. Section 7 of the park, where he'd found that impossible nest. It was still there, transformed now into a monument. Humans transformed and synthesis beings alike came to see it, to remember the moment when one species became three. Mike Harrison had been wrong about one thing. The nest wasn't a breeding ground or territorial marker. It had been a question posed by the original through the transformed it created. The question was simple. What will you become? Earth's answer had been complex. Everything. As the sun set over the forest, painting the sky in impossible colors that only transformed eyes could fully see, but human eyes could still appreciate, Daniel felt a presence. The original. Its consciousness touching his across dimensions. "Was this your plan all along?" Daniel asked. The answer came not in words, but in feeling amusement, satisfaction, and something like pride. The original had been the catalyst, but the choice had always been humanity's. To transform or resist, to unite or divide, to transcend or remain. They had chosen all of it, and in choosing everything had become something the galaxy had never seen before. Three children approached the monument, one human, one transformed, one synthesis. They played together, their differences obvious but irrelevant to their friendship. They would grow up in a world where transformation was a choice, where humanity had three faces, where the impossible had become every day. Daniel watched them and smiled an expression that shouldn't have been possible with his transformed features, but was. He thought about the ranger he'd been walking these paths with simple purpose. That man was gone, but not lost transformed, but not erased. The children ran off, their laughter echoing through the forest. Human vocal cords transformed harmonic synthesis frequencies that existed between sound and thought. It was cacophonous and beautiful, divided and united, exactly what humanity had become. As night fell, the stars emerged, not just the familiar constellations, but new light ships and beings from across the galaxy come to study Earth's unique experiment. Among them, the entities watched and learned their perfect unity, enriched by observing Earth's imperfect multiplicity. Daniel dissolved into the synthesis realm, existing everywhere and nowhere, watching over all three humanities. His job as Ranger had evolved, but never truly ended. He still protected, still preserved, still guided, just on a scale he never could have imagined. Somewhere another ranger might find another anomaly, another choice point that would transform the world again. But that was for tomorrow. Tonight, Earth's three humanities lived, worked, fought, and loved in their magnificent discord, proving that evolution wasn't about becoming one thing. It was about having the courage to become everything you could be, even if that everything was divided, contradictory, and impossible. The transformation was complete. The evolution continued. And in the spaces between human transformed and synthesis, in the chaos of cooperation and conflict, something new was always being born. That was Earth's gift to the galaxy. Not perfection, but possibility. Not unity, but connection. Not one answer, but three, then four. Then infinite variations on the theme of consciousness exploring itself. The nest remained in Section 7, slowly being absorbed by the forest, becoming part of the landscape. Visitors often asked what it meant, this structure that had started everything. Daniel, when asked, always gave the same answer: it means we had a choice, and we chose to choose. The story that began with one man finding something impossible in the woods had become the story of humanity finding itself divided and multiplied, broken and whole, exactly as it was meant to be.